Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, your paranormal portal podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by the supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together.
Everybody into Monday Madness, where and I mean this when I say it, nobody knows what's going to happen, right, Steve? Welcome in, Steve Stockton. You all know my buddy.
Sorry, you can see all that stuff behind me there. I'm still redoing my studio, and I've got boxes piled up. And
it doesn't matter.
Equipment and gear and 15 synthesizers back there.
I got you beat. You can see right through my chest. I wore this for Brian Bowden. It's a t-shirt he gave me and a couple members of my family, and it just happened to be green, but you can kind of see I got, in honor of tonight, I got the UFO, I got the Chupacabra, I got the little ghost, I got Nessie, and I got a little Bigfoot right there, but looks like I could poke a hole right through my chest.
What was that movie back, I think it was in the 80s, called Death Becomes Her?
And you could see through.
See right through her. Yeah, she'd been shot or something, and you could look through for one second.
Absolutely.
That's what it reminds me
of.
And
I was going to change it, but I said, you know what? That's kind of creepy. So there you go. That's just creepy. So you see all the stuff behind me. It's just nuts. But anyway.
Need something flesh-colored behind you so it looks like you can see through the
shirt. Right. Or just, some one of those little blood packets or something. I could just bite one of those or whatever. But hello to everybody in the chat. Let me get everybody in here. Hello, Carol. She said, Steve sent me. I got Body Void. I got Todd Brown. I've got, hey, Patriot 174 Anon. Hey, hon. How you doing? Bigfoot Anon. You got, let me see. You see any of your bunch in there? I just love your people.
Yeah, I got the Stocktonites that follow me wherever I go. My followers, my dedicated
absolutely
fans, whatever, family. They're family.
So
they're
many
not
wonderful
fans.
people. We got Kara, we got Uncommon Belief. It's a wonderful mod, and I just love you all. I know Sue will be coming in here soon. She's just so far away. It's I don't know. It could be like 3 a.m. on next week where she is. So there it is. So do you have? Oh, and Andrew, hello. Andrew and Gnomes Trucking Express, hello. If I've missed anybody, I'm sorry. It's going kind of fast, and I've got 4 screens here. I'm trying to keep an eye on to see who's up and what's what. All right. Is it sounding pretty good? Can everybody hear us pretty good? Give us
I've got it running on the laptop. I've got on my phone here, and then on the Windows PC over here. And then I've got more screens over here if I need.
I know. I have so many doggone screens. It's just...
and part of them are in the floor because, like I said, I'm redoing everything in here and got stuff piled up. It's work in progress.
Terrific.
Trying to build them racks for my synthesizers and stuff. Who we got?
Hello, everybody. 5x5. That means that they can hear us just fine. That's great.
Good deal.
And so tonight, Steve and I got together. We used to do this all the time just for fun, and sometimes we did it on my old Journey Through the Gate, where we were just doing audio, And I told him one time, I said, let's just do monsters. It was like, how many different monsters? And we got to talking. That's the danger part. You better make a sandwich and have something to drink and a pack of cigarettes, whatever, because we just started talking. I said, well, do you want to talk about this one? Do you want to talk about that one? But what I really wanted to do was, when Steve and I were growing up, and you guys might remember too, some of you, Universal Studios came out with a whole bunch of movies, and they were all around certain monsters. And you had the werewolf, you had Frankenstein, you had the mummy, you had all these different ones, and you had your favorite ones, and it was just the way they did them back then, Steve. It was just amazing. Yeah,
had those, and then you had like the Hammer films. And I was too young to see most of the Universal stuff in its first release, but back when I was a kid, they packaged those up and sold them to TV stations. So the local station, we had a show on one channel there in Knoxville called The Early Show, and they would have Monster Week, and they would
Yep.
show like all the Universal stuff during one week and all Hammer films another week and things. So got a good intro to the monsters
Monsters.
that way, all the different monsters. And some of that stuff was scary when you're,
Oh
especially
yeah.
when you're a little kid. Like, what
When
the
I
hell is
was
that?
young, because there were so many people. My mom was single mom in the in the 60s. So, in the late 60s, early 70s, you come home, and now they call them latchkey kids. We just call them kids that could get in the door. But, you know, but, oh, we need to go up a little bit. All right. So anyway, let me fix my mic here.
Is
Just
mine
get a little
okay? I
closer.
need to.
Yeah, you sound pretty loud.
Mine gains way up.
But the thing is we had we had 4 channels. We got an extra channel out of New York, and on Saturday mornings they would always play. You got a Godzilla or a Mothra, or you had one of these Universal or the Hammer ones, replayed, and then usually they'd play an Abbott and Costello in between, or one of the Bing Crosby and Bob Hope, like
Of
road
the
to
road
Bali.
movies,
Yeah,
yeah.
the road movies, Road to Bali, all that. So you could have a whole Saturday morning after cartoons, really good Bugs Bunny
Yeah.
cartoons, and so that
Before
was
they
like your day.
edited all the violence out of them. But you mentioned Abbott and Costello. They had some good monster movies. They
Yes,
were
they did.
comedies, but a lot of it was based on stuff that was real, like that one, the ghost one that we talk about.
Oh
They,
yeah, The Time of Their Lives. That was
yeah,
so good. Has
everybody needs to
anybody
watch
seen?
that.
Oh, please do. It's called The Time of Their Lives, and it was done in I think 1938. And I've talked about it multiple times, but they had it so right. If you go back and look at all the things we've learned. Hey, Grandpa C. Hi, love. And the way they did it, from the way the medium they did the seance, from the whole perspective of the ghost and the history on it and everything. It was just wonderful. And I know you can get it and you watch it for free if you look on dailymotion.com. And I think it's in like 2 parts, but you can watch the whole thing commercial free and everything. It's absolutely worth looking for. Just Google it or whatever, DuckDuckGo, whatever you want to do. But it's so good. Hey, sweetie, so glad to see you all here. I'm sorry, it's going fast and I'm trying to catch them all. So again, if
Yeah,
I
there's
miss,
a lot in there. I would say hi to some of my people. Gemma Jade says she's catching lightning bugs with a jet.
nice.
And then, I guess you just hold your net out the window and scoop up on. She
Wow.
corrected it to net. Todd
So,
Brown, buddy, I got your email. No worries. It wasn't anything at all. So don't worry about that. Laura Stevens is here. See if there's some more of my people. Maraid the Mermaid.
now how do you pronounce her name?
Maraid.
Maraid. That's
It's
beautiful.
Gaelic for
Beautiful.
Margaret.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Carol XO has Cassie here.
KC.
Oracles and I haven't seen. I sent her a link. I don't know if she's here or not. Yeah, this chat's moving fast. It's hard to
Yep.
keep up with it.
And Gemma, hey Gemma. So yeah, so that was the thing. So we got to see that. No, they really almost became our friends, and everybody had favorites, and everybody had the ones that kind of spooked them out a little bit for whatever reason, and depending on the way they did it. So I thought tonight to get the chat. Let me get this one off. It's moving so fast I can't find it. But anyway, Uncommon Belief says, who doesn't like monsters? And I can tell you right now, as long as they're on the TV screen, I'm fine with them. How about you,
Yeah.
Steve? Met a few in real life that I wasn't too fond of. We had to get rid of them pretty
Absolutely.
quick.
There's a lot of human monsters out there.
That's the worst kind. That's absolutely the worst kind. And I think our monsters tonight, they got a bad deal, because I know some humans that are probably worse than these guys. But in the Universal ones, I think the way they did it was, it almost, in some cases, it made you feel sorry for them. I mean, I really felt so sorry for certain ones, and I won't give it away yet. But instead of doing a list, because when we did our other show, and that's actually in 2 parts. There's a Monsters 1 and a Monsters Part 2, and that's all on the YouTube channel. And I want to thank, before I forget, all the new subscribers. Thank you, everybody who has shared it out, everybody that's given it a thumbs up. I so appreciate it. We are exactly, drum roll please, I think we are at 925 subscribers. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. So take
Oracles and beyond. Cassie, she is one of our biggest supporters
great.
of you and me. She's always there, always putting it out to everybody, and she brought a lot of people over to me and over to this channel. And
I wonder.
thank you,
Thank you so
Cassie.
much. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
I'll be on with her tomorrow night doing oracle card readings.
That's fantastic, and like I said, I'm just learning. I got to the point where I can open up to that. I do so many other things, and sometimes I have to be careful because I draw one energy, and I like to try to keep it there, but I'm starting to have to to move into the other stuff. Like I'm going to be doing probably this weekend in Gettysburg. We're going back to Gettysburg, going back to the battlefields, and you got to really kind of prep
Bash
for
is
that.
this weekend. Laura begged me. She's like, please get a last minute ticket and come and hang out with us in Gettysburg. I'd love to, ladies, but I really can't this year. But next year, for sure, I should
We're
be moved
coming.
back east by then,
Yep.
and it'll be a lot easier to get
We'll be
there.
sitting there signing books and stuff.
And I'll have some place that I can put Mulder where I don't have to worry about him too.
Well, let's see. We've got quite a few people in here now. So what I thought we would do, and again, if you guys want to go back and see the other ones, because I guarantee there's so many monsters, so many cryptids, so many, just all kinds of things from tulpas all over the place. So we're gonna miss some tonight, but so you can go back in those and catch 2 shows. That's like probably 4 hours of monsters if you put it together.
At least.
I guarantee we're going to talk about stuff tonight we didn't talk about then, and vice versa. So I thought it would be really neat, instead of making a list and just saying, okay, what about this one, what about this one, I thought it would spark our memory a little bit, take us back a little bit in time and bring us a little bit to the future, where we are now, not to the future but to the present, and kind of do it that way. So I made a quick little video if anybody wants to see it. Look through here, and as you're looking through, see some old favorites, maybe a couple of new ones you hadn't heard of, and then maybe some that I forgot, because I just made it today and I made it kind of real quick. So I'm counting on the chat that if there's one in there that you'd like to talk about, of course we're going to probably touch on some of the universal ones, a little bit of origins first, but then we'll bring up and get the chat involved in it too. Does that sound like fun?
Sounds great to me.
All right. So I'm going to play this little video. It's only like 2 minutes or so, and take you back in time a little bit. What we're talking about, because a picture, is worth 1,000 words. So, all right. So let's give it a shot. Here we go. And we'll be right back. And there.
Yeah, that was good.
How about that, man? I mean, and that was just a midget. You know what I mean? A little bit. Now, did that spark any? You've got some favorites in there. I snuck some secret favorites of yours in there, Steve. I know I did. And I put some secret ones of mine that I just
Yeah, there's,
love.
and that's still, like you said, that's just
Smidgen.
don't want to incur the wrath of the Titanic here, but that's just the tip of the iceberg.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. So far this week, everything's been fine as far as the Titanic stuff, but we're picking up on that too. So again, anybody who is going to be on Steve's list, we've got a few. We've got I know Pseudonym. I know that Jeremy Enfinger is going to be on it. So if anybody wants to volunteer for the Titanic experiment, if there's any new people in here, you want to run by that one real quick, Steve, that what we're doing.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know and didn't tune in, a couple of weeks ago we were doing a show on Ghosts of the Titanic, and we touched briefly on the Titanic curse. And right at the very time we were mentioning it, I mean exactly at the same time, I was talking about the Titanic Museum in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. And right when we mentioned the curse and that place, they had an iceberg wall there made out of real ice that where people could walk up and touch it to see what an iceberg would feel like. And it's made with some kind of cooling, and it's real ice anyway. But it collapsed and sent 3 people to the hospital. I mean, the very second we mentioned the place, and Cisco was
Yes,
like,
true.
"Did we cause that?" We didn't know until after the show
Right.
that it happened. But anyway, we've decided to do Titanic paranormal experiment. I don't know what else to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think we call it paranormal challenge.
Yep.
But you can buy pieces of coal that actually were salvaged from the wreck of the Titanic. That's probably the cheapest thing you can buy. There's plates and silverware, and I know one time I saw some bottles of wine that were selling for thousands and thousands of dollars. But you can get the coal relatively cheaply. Well, we've heard stories about people that purchased that coal that started having paranormal activity in their homes once they bought that. There
Yep.
was one lady that claimed she kept seeing a figure of a man in coveralls, covered in soot, actually like he was a coal tender or something from the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And once she got rid of the coal, then he stopped appearing. So I've got a chunk of the coal from the Titanic that we're going to use. Now that's the real thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
actual. And then I've got some replica stuff, a first class ticket, menu, stuff like that. That's just to go along with it, just to kind of create an ambiance or an atmosphere. We're going to send that in the mail, have like a chain where one person sends it to the next and they send it to the next. People are going to volunteer to keep that in their home for a few days and see if they have any paranormal activity.
Mm-hmm.
Check things like with the EMF meter or what's the other thing, the
Oh
spirit
gosh.
box and
Yeah.
a pendulum, anything you can check it with,
Or even if it's just a simple
check for
tape recorder.
EVPs. Yeah,
Yeah, we're going to see, it's evolving as we go. We're going to see if, if you want to do it live, like say you want to do your experiment, we'll do a piece of Monday, we'll put an extra half hour on or something. We'll do it live for each person if they want to. We also have some really good paranormal investigators that are really going to put it through at very first, put it through some readings to see when it comes back around, if it has any different energies, is it picking up energy from us, is it picking up, we're going to do all kinds of things, but the main thing is the part I wanted to put in there is I'm going to do a letter, and I'll send it to Steve and he can print it out, or I'll just send him a letter and write it out to where each person is going to say the same thing to begin with, that if there's anyone that is connected to this coal, or anyone is connected to the energy of us speaking about the Titanic, which does draw them, trust me, because like we say all the time, if you speak of them, they hear you. So see if they can follow the box. And we get around to the end, we're going to try to put all our energy and good intent together to see if we can get them some help. And that's the ultimate ending for this. And we're hoping that if we could just help one, that would be just the bomb. So.
and they've got the Titanic too. They've built a replica ship
Mm-hmm.
that's going to resail the maiden voyage and complete it this time. And I'm trying to talk Cisco into going to England and riding the ship back. And to think of all those souls out there in the water along the way, there's
I
probably
know.
1,500 ghosts out there wondering what's going on that you
True.
could send over.
And it's like the uh, the orbs that go above the wreckage and all, and it's
Hmm.
right there in South Newfoundland. And I'm going to talk to a couple of people that I know that live there and see if they can be a part of this and take the box and get close and
That'd be
see if
great.
there's
Maybe
anybody wants to
go
gather.
to the shore and see if
Yeah,
anybody's
yeah,
swam to shore by now.
yeah. Follow the box. Follow the box. That's what we're going to do. So that's really cool. And so, if anybody would like to volunteer, Steve's going to take you down and just put in it. I volunteer. We'll get you on the list, and we'll see how we do.
It's work in progress. I'm still putting everything together. We'll
Yep.
figure out the best way to mail it so it makes a circuitous route there and gets to everybody with the shortest travel distance between people. It'll
Right.
take
That
some
would be great.
logistics,
Right.
but we'll get it done. I want to say hi
Absolutely.
to my buddy Finn, who's in the chat there.
Hi, Finn.
Her, along with her friend Maddox, they're going to be in a horror film that I'm putting together next year. They are the, I don't want to give too much away, but they're kind of the bad guys. One set of bad guys.
Set of bad guys. We got a lot of stuff going on in the chat here about. See, Andrew says here, I've seen something about the group that did an overnight stay in Melbourne Manor in Melbourne, Iowa, just a little bit away from the Vasilla Axe Murder House. I have a hard time saying that one, but yeah, I can understand that, and it energy, like we say all the time, it doesn't have to happen right there. I mean, if you've got a bright enough light and you're calling something and it's wandering, it can be lured that way. And so I think that this is gonna I think we're going to see some good things with the Titanic. And if nothing else, we've all said, with good intent, that we wish them well and send them good energy and things like that. And I've done experiments like that too, and it's been amazing. Just good energy, good thoughts, good positive things. So I want to tell everybody tonight, keep those for yourself too. Do think positively, manifest positive in your life, because you know positive draws positive, negative draws negative. So I think that you'll feel a little lighter if you do that at least. So, but what do you think about monsters, Steve? I mean, seeing that, it brings back memories. In there, we did see a little bit of that Abbott and Costello with Frankenstein behind him. Remember Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein? We
Yeah.
saw
Uh,
we saw the
they met
Wolfman.
all the monsters. They
They
met the
did.
Wolf Man. They met the Mummy.
They did.
I think it goes back. People like to be scared.
Hmm.
All those monsters, they draw on something that's already there in your subconscious, some sort
Hmm.
of primal, almost feral fear that we're all born with, and
Absolutely.
that's just different ways that it manifests. And you know, whether it's a mummy or the wolf man or
Right.
vampire or a monster, that it all goes back to the human condition and what are you afraid of.
Uh huh.
And some of those were really the first ones where they attempted to show you what the monsters look like. Now, stuff I've done, I've always tried to keep uh, the monster behind something, because I figure what the person conjures in their own head is going to be 10 times scarier than what I come up
So
with,
true.
because it's personalized to them. But this was the first time that, I mean, when Frankenstein and some of that came out and Dracula, you had
Hmm.
people passing out in the theaters
They
because they
did.
were so
It's
scared.
true.
They'd never
It's so
seen
true.
anything like
And
that.
this is in black and white thing, okay? This was all the Universal ones that came out. And now I remember my first memory of them was I had a babysitter, and I was probably between, 5 and 6, somewhere around in there. And her son had an 8 millimeter movie camera. Remember the little
Mhm.
reels? Now you youngins wouldn't know this, but
Mhm.
it was just 8 millimeter film on a projector, and it played. And he played it on a screen in his room, and he had all the action figures. They were models that you put together. They weren't like dolls you could buy at the time. It was like just like you'd get a car model or something. You put
Yeah,
it
it
all
was
to pieces.
Aurora made those monster
Yep.
models. They came in like a gray plastic.
Hmm.
Sometimes the fancy ones would have glow in the dark parts that you could substitute,
True.
but you had to paint them by hand, and I never bothered to paint mine. I was lucky to get them glued together. I have a friend that collects those. It's got like a museum quality collection.
Wow.
He's got some of the original artwork and things that they used for the boxes, but
Mm.
they're worth some money now. I should have hung on to them.
Should have hung on to them. Yeah, I wish I had all my Star Wars stuff from the 70s.
Yeah.
Because I never got, Barbie dolls and stuff like that. I was a GI Joe girl. I love GI Joe. Actually, if I wound up getting Barbies, the GI Joes would usually kidnap them and hold them hostage and They'd wind up getting blown up with an
We used
M80
to
or
get in
something.
trouble for that. Now this was the
such a
big
jerk.
GI Joes, the 12-inch ones.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
when they shrunk
The
him
Kung
down,
Fu grip.
he's little and pissed
Yeah,
off now. But
I
the
didn't
original
like that.
GI Joes were 12 inches, and
Uh-huh.
I'd go over to my friend's house to play GI Joes, and that's what would always happen. We would raid his sister's Barbies, and take GI Joe would take 2 or 3 Barbies hostage and have them tied up, and
I did that all the time.
he got in
Well,
trouble. His sister didn't appreciate that.
for 1 year, every Barbie you got, one leg fell off, so she was already crippled. So God bless her, she was just a mess. She couldn't run. They caught her every time. But I had brother. Anyway, it's a long story. But back there, seeing that and going into that room, at first I was scared to go in there because he would always be showing these movies and stuff, and they were bigger than life. As a little kid, and that was my introduction to it, and I started really liking, other than ghosts and things like that, which you didn't get a lot of those movies back then. You just didn't. But when we started seeing them on Saturday mornings on Channel 11, it was amazing because you got into it. Now think about, the Mummy never really scared me because I could never understand, why don't they just run?
Just run away from him,
Just
or
run.
take a match to him.
Because it would always back them into a corner and they'd be screaming and they just let them come, and it was like the guy was talking about the tanna leaves. Remember, you had to boil the tanna leaves and the Mummy would wait, it was... Oh gosh,
Be
that
like,
one.
have a little fire scarecrow, throw a match at him, and then run. I mean,
Then
he's
run.
not.
But he got him every time, didn't he?
Yeah, as long as you didn't get cornered, you could get away from him.
And I always felt so sorry for the Wolfman. He was such a reluctant monster.
Poor old Lyle Talbot.
Yep, it was just, I always felt so sorry for him. And, as you saw in that video there, women had just, I don't know what they're running around in the moors. Remember the moors and the fog? And these women are just running around in the moors in the middle of the night bumping into the Wolfman. I don't understand it. And then there was Dracula. Now, Dracula, when he came through, that was something else. The way they would do that slow build of that scare, and he's just creeping in. He didn't just rush in like now you see stuff, they move so fast. Everything was slow, and it was that build, and you couldn't understand the hypnotic effect that Dracula had to control these people. And some of these women were just nutty as all get out because they would just be like, just so succumb to it, And now, of course, you've got all like the Twilight, you've got the Discovery of Witches, and you've got all the, all the different ones. You think of all the vampire shows, now. And they've added a little bit more to it. But if you go back to those old ones, man, they were something else. And he just did this and turn into a bat and fly off, Yeah. And Pseudonym's going to come in here one night and tell us, she spent a lot of time in New Orleans, and she has a real good origin story on vampires. I can't wait to hear it. Cool. But that one got me, but... it would make you close your window at night sometimes because if the bat's just out there hover. Remember, he would just hover outside the window. And,
Yeah.
What I mean? It's just, it's just like, oh God, it was creepy.
Tennis racket.
Yeah, tennis racket. Boom. But the other ones like I think the creature from the Black Lagoon freaked me out because
that one was really
movie,
scary.
Yeah, within that movie. Is that not the one where, for some reason, they're going through? Was it Africa? Was it the? I can't remember where they were.
I don't remember. I was trying to think about that the other day. But where she's swimming,
yeah,
and the thing is reaching up, just almost about to touch her, and you're just like, no.
And wasn't that the one where the cow fell off and the piranha just ate him and the bones just floated up?
Yeah.
That freaked me out.
I
that was it.
Close to the lake, and my friends and I used to go down there and wade in the lake, play in the lake, but not after I saw that on the early show. I was like, I'm not getting in the water. If I can't see the bottom, I'm not getting in it.
I bothered my mother as a kid the whole time because I think it was a Frankenstein movie that kept, here we are back at the moors again, and the marshes, and the banshee is in the marsh, all that stuff. But there was one of the ones with the Frankenstein where he got into the quicksand, Steve. I was so scared of quicksand because you weren't getting out of quicksand.
That was the same way when I was a kid. I mean, we watched Daniel Boone on TV with Fess Parker. He
Oh,
always had to go get Israel or Mingo or somebody out of the quicksand. You watch
sure.
Rawhide, they get in the quicksand. Any of those shows that were on back then, they get in quicksand. I was terrified. I'd be out in the woods and like, I bet there's quicksand around here.
Yep, yep.
But that was just, I think there's a whole generation of us that had a fear of quicksand.
Yeah. We're driving, and you'd see the punks. You know, the big punks in the grass that would grow up in the marsh. And I was in New Jersey at the time, so there was kind of swampy stuff around. And I asked my mom, "Is that quicksand? Is that quicksand?" And one day she said yes, and I promise you, my whole body, the blood just ran right out of me when she said yes. And I'm thinking, oh my god,
Yeah, stay away from there.
oh my
Laura
god.
Stevens, that was just a thing. They used it like in every cowboy movie ever, monster movies. It was just a thing back in the 60s and 70s.
Absolutely.
I think it was just an easy way to create drama and
Yeah.
tension. But you put people in the quicksand and then
That was it.
they're struggling. How are we going to get out?
And the more you struggle, the faster you go down. So, I used to practice in my head before I went to sleep. Like, if I ever got in, you just don't move, and you have to kind of like reach for a branch or, then I started when I would go through the woods. I was probably about 7 or 8. We'd cut through the woods to go to my friend's house. Sounds crazy because, we did that stuff back then. And I'd always carry a big stick in case I fell in. I could catch myself.
Yeah. And
It's funny.
they would always, the people that didn't make it, they would show them and they're just slowly, like the last thing you see is
That's
like
it.
their nose and mouth and they're doing this silent scream as they sink below. And then when I was a
Horrible.
kid, I fell into, it'd been an old cistern or something. It was, the top of it had, I guess like algae or something over the top of it. I didn't recognize that it was a hole full of water. I thought it was a concrete pad. I stepped on it, bloop, went right down. So that only increased my fear of quicksand. Of course, that was super quick because you just went right to the bottom. And
Yeah.
I managed to pull myself out, of course. But I was thinking, man,
Ooh.
if there's holes in here with that much water in them, is around an old house site. I bet there's quicksand in here too. And then growing up close to the lake, the bank's muddy sometimes. And we had 7 streams that flowed out of the hillside on our property into one big creek, which went into the lake, which was like 300 feet away. So there was a lot of muddy areas. I've lost shoes before.
Yeah.
It was just mud. It wasn't quicksand, but it's like,
But it
oh
would
my God, it
suck
made
your
you think
shoe.
it was quicksand. Yeah, suck the shoe right off of you.
You suck your shoe right off your foot. That's for sure. But I do remember one of them where Frankenstein went in, and I think was that the one where he went in the quicksand and was it him and the Wolfman wound up, or did they fall through the ice or something?
There
And
was
they
so
wound up
many of those.
frozen.
And then you had
Oh,
like Billy the Kid meets Dracula. That one
oh,
scared me with John
yeah,
Carradine.
yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
I
Wow,
like the
crazy.
crossovers like that. That was big for a
Hmm.
while. They'd take the monsters and put them with Abbott and Costello or put them with a cowboy or put them in the city, or
Yeah.
something like
Uh
that
huh.
out of their
It
element.
looks
And
so
that
different.
worked well. Yeah.
It looks so different. But I remember when we were talking about Frankenstein, and we were talking about how Mary Shelley wrote the book, and it was like on a challenge. Everybody was writing stories and poems and stuff, and she just went off and wrote this book, just sat down and wrote it, and finished it, and everybody was amazed by it. And of course, it became a bestseller. But I really think that after I went back and read it after all the movies and things like that because I wanted to get the gist of it. What did she put in there? What did they take out? How did they change it? And when you read the book, you really get the whole the overwhelming idea that Frankenstein wasn't the monster. It was Dr. Frankenstein. It was the monster
Yeah.
that was doing this. And then you had all of the add-ons. You had, of course, in the little video there, you saw Bride of Frankenstein, and then they just went on and on and on. Then they started, like Steve said, mixing them all together. You'd have Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, and everybody else. But what I forgot when I was going through those today, the old Universals, the Phantom of the Opera.
That just popped into my head right
Did
before you
it?
said that.
You
That
sent it
one
to me.
scared the crap out of me too because
It did.
I haven't seen that one in years and years and years, but wasn't that like Jack the Ripper that was hiding down there in the sewers with him or something like that?
Yes, yes, there
Okay.
was something like that was going on. There was somebody down there with him. Yes, there was. But that whole thing was
That
really
part where he
sad
turned
too.
around and whipped his mask off.
That
That
was
was
it.
another one where people passed out in the theaters and stuff.
Yep,
They were
it was
so
too much.
horrified. And that just Lon Chaney and the makeup, there was no
Amazing.
CGI or anything back
Nothing.
then.
And it was all acting in the eyes and stuff too. I think
Yeah.
that's why I felt so sorry for the
And
Wolfman, because he was so sad. He was such a
yeah,
reluctant,
yeah, he didn't want to be. Well, and then
chaining himself.
even I was a teenage werewolf with Michael Landon.
Oh yeah, I
That
remember that.
was, you felt sorry for him.
Hmm.
But I think the one I had the most sorry for was Frankenstein. He
I do
didn't
too.
ask to be born. He didn't ask to be put together.
Hmm.
That was why she called that modern Prometheus. Prometheus was a Titan who was chained and tortured by Zeus for stealing fire from heaven and giving it to mankind. So
Uh-huh.
that's kind of what Dr. Frankenstein was trying to do. I think he was trying to be God or play God and created this creature, and then the creature gets the brunt of the hatred. I think they chased the doctor with torches and pitchforks too. But the scene where he throws a little girl in the water there just because he didn't really understand what he was doing, he wanted to be friends with her.
Yeah, absolutely. With the daisy, oh, that scene is
Yeah,
amazing.
she throws the daisy in the water, then he picks her up and
Yeah,
flings her in the water, and then they
yeah.
want to kill him.
And that's it. All misunderstood. Crowd's
Yep.
gone. The mob, was part of like a monster too. I think that was probably another underlying thing in that book, and the movie that you're talking about, that movie version, because it was the mob was also became a big monster too,
Hmm.
and just wanted to burn everything down and tear it all down. But Gemma, I love you too, sweetie. She's got to go real quick here,
Oh,
and
bye,
we
Jim. I
love
have
you.
fun catching lightning bugs.
Love you, Jersey girl. Take care. So yeah, so that was like the Universal stuff, and it was such a big thing because you have to remember back then we didn't have, so many different movies and so many different channels and so much different stuff. Everybody got focused on one thing, but before we get out of Universal, the babysitter's son, who was probably 16-ish, 15, 16, the scariest thing that ever happened to me with that, because it would scare you to look at all these things. He'd tell you about him, and he was really into it. He wasn't trying to scare you. He was proud of him. He was excited. He knew about it. But the scariest thing was when we all had to bring in money. We're going on a little field trip, and about 3 blocks away was a theater. And this babysitter babysat quite a few little kids, and he took us on a long walk. We went to that theater, and we went and saw Snow White and Seven Dwarfs. And that witch scared the living pants off me. That was the scariest thing. I never got the way she was, and the apple, and the evil of the whole thing. And the dwarfs kind of freaked me out a little bit too.
Yeah, now that was me. Somebody asked on Facebook the other day what movie most traumatized you as a child. For me, it was The Wizard of Oz. I said that and people laughed, but I'm serious. I did not like that movie, and it wasn't the witch that bothered me. It was the little people.
The dwarfs, yeah.
There was just something about I had a fear and aversion to
Mhm.
the dwarfs or midgets or whatever the proper thing to call them is now.
Mhm.
But I was scared to death. And my dad worked with a guy that had dwarfism, and when he come over to visit, I'd go hide. And
What?
he used to tell me he was going to take me fishing with him. I'm like,
Oh,
I'm going
he would take
nowhere
you
with
to
you,
he
buddy.
would take you to the quicksand, Steve.
Yeah,
You were never
I,
coming
I'd,
back.
I'd take the quicksand over that. at
just
least,
a,
at
just a
least I had a
shoe.
chance with the.
Just a shoe bubbling around on the top of the quicksand to let you know that Steve had been
But
there.
again, just one of those irrational
And yeah,
fears that you
yeah,
have as a
it
kid,
just
and I
happens.
had that quite a ways into adulthood, but I've overcome a lot of that now. But I
I don't
don't
know that
cross
I
don't
have.
don't cross the street anymore when see a dwarf coming.
The
But
funniest
especially it's
thing
like
scared
the
me.
kids from the kids, even though they weren't kids, with the Lollipop Guild. They looked like kids,
I
but they
welcome
had these
you
creepy
to the
little masks.
Lollipop Guild.
Yeah,
The
that was.
Lollipop Guild.
I'd be
Yep.
in tears when that was on. Like no.
That
And
was
I just
creepy.
couldn't accept that they were adults. I thought they were kids, that there was just
Yeah.
something really wrong with them.
But the,
And
the
my
hair
mom
was
are
the
like,
hair.
no, those are grown people. I'm like, no, no, it
It was the
isn't
hair.
so. It doesn't exist.
I tell you what, I love the flying monkeys out of that thing more
Yeah,
than
they were
anything.
cool. The
They
witch,
didn't
I
scare
loved
me
the
at
witch.
all.
She
I was
was
like, how do
awesome.
I get me one of those? Can I have a monkey? I remember I bugged my mother for so long because she took us. It was the first movie, Wizard of Oz, that went from, I think it was being made when color really came available, maybe. Something like that. So when they went to Oz, instead of redoing everything in color, they got the great idea of doing black and white in the present, and Oz was in color. And they made that whole thing about horse of a different color, and all that was added in. But I remember my sister had oh, what do you call those? The little monkeys that people used to have back in the 60s and 70s. But they're like a spider monkey.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a spider monkey.
Yeah, I
Well,
remember when you could order those out of a
yeah,
comic book. I knew a lady that
yeah.
had one,
Uh huh.
and it got loose, and for years we'd see it up in the trees and
Oh
stuff.
wow. I know ours used to get loose. 'Cause I remember my mom trying to get it off her drapes all the time and stuff. But I figured since my sister had a monkey, I could have a monkey. But I wanted a flying monkey, and my mom kept telling me, I said, what do you want for Christmas? Flying monkey, and maybe a friend for maybe 2 flying monkeys so we could have a friend. But that's just it's funny how the monsters and stuff have changed now. Uncommon Belief here says the transformation in American Werewolf in London was still the best one. You know
Yeah.
what? I agree.
I agree.
I agree 100%
That
because
looks so real. I mean, you
it did.
almost think that, that really happened and they just filmed it.
Yeah, I mean it was something to see back in the day, and I think that probably came out right around the time that cable was coming out. I can't remember if I saw that on cable, like Showtime or something like that back in the early 80s, or if I saw it in the theater. But I remember when I saw it, it was the same type of feeling because, again, he's reluctant. But, the good part about that was, I thought was amazing, was his friend that was coming to try to tell him to kill himself. You can't go on like this. And every time he showed up, he was a little more decomposed.
A little more. Yeah,
little
that
more
was
decomposed.
creepy.
Oh, creepy.
And then, that experience we had where I was dreaming about a guy that every time I talked to him, I could see a little more of his ribs or a little more of his flesh was gone or a little more of his clothing had
Yes.
rotted away. And that
Yes.
was somebody that was had been a living person that Cisco and another lady crossed over. I
Yeah.
don't know why he showed up to me, but I knew who to get him to get him where he needed to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And he didn't want, he had a lot of reluctance, which is a lot when Ghosts are Earthbound and they've made a conscious decision not to cross. He just needed help. He really needed a lot of therapeutic help and talk, but he wouldn't talk to a woman, which was funny. But we had to send for his mom to come get him, and she came and got him, and it was a great story. That's also in the book Steve and I wrote. So, but that's what it reminded me of, and that's what Steve was describing to me. Is every time I see him, he's more decomposed, so he's like really like he's running out of time.
And he was dead.
Yeah.
Leaning up against a cedar tree with the limbs hanging down so far you couldn't really see him. You had to look up under there. Now, this was all in a dream or a vision or whatever you want to call it, but I remember at first I could hear him talking under there, and I was hesitant to peek under there because I knew what he was going to look like. And then when I got to where I could just like peer through the branches and see him, he was just decomposing, and then every visitation would be a little more. I could see the skull, I could see, but he still had on like his biker denims and stuff. But I remember seeing the ribs and stuff where the T-shirt had rotted away. That was just so creepy. And there was some kind of like black goo, which I assume that had been flesh at one time or something that was still clinging to the bones in places. And I could even smell the stench of death in the dream. It was
Absolutely.
awful.
So lucid. That dream was so crisp, in your mind. And Steve was trying so hard to remember all the details because you never know what one detail is going to give you the location. Because first, when we started, we were looking to see where he was, and then we started figuring out, okay, this is bigger than that.
Yeah, we were
So
looking
that
for
was
a
trick.
motorcycle.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what had happened. He had crashed his motorcycle and had crawled under this tree and actually died there. And the motorcycle was down over the bank and on the edge of a river, and it was eventually being covered up by the dirt falling off the bank.
That's how long it was. This guy had just wandered around out there
Yeah.
and then somehow connected into Steve's
When
energy.
I saw the motorcycle, it was like one handlebar, part of a headlight, and half the gas tank was all you could see. The rest of it was under the dirt. So it had been there a while.
Incredible. Andrew and Gnomes Truck and Express here. I'm just going to call you Andrew. Or do you like Andrew and Gnomes? Because I'm not sure where the gnomes are, but you're going to freak Steve out. But he said he liked the werewolf movie with Anthony Hopkins, and it's Benicio del Toro. Benicio del Toro. And that is a really good werewolf movie, too. I have to admit, it really is. There's a couple of good ones out there, but I have to say, probably the older one and, the American Werewolf in London was my favorite for a lot of reasons. You
Yeah.
know, that we said, but that was something.
I was a big David Naughton fan anyway, and nobody else could have played that part like he did.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then the friend, and just a couple of stupid guys going to England and having a good time. It worked so well. It was
It
very
did.
believable. And that was who's that? Landis, I think, that directed that.
It could have been.
John
It could have.
Landis, I
Yeah,
want to
John
say.
Landis. It could have been. I can't swear to it, but I think it was. But that was it too. It was going into that town. They were going backpacking across, Europe, and they wound up in this little town where everybody's just being creepy at the pub. Nobody's telling the
Slaughtered
secrets.
lamb. That was your
Love
hint
those.
right there.
Yeah, that was it. The slaughtered lamb. But it really was, and it. Oh gosh, I remember. See, this is what happens to me and Steve. That's going to remind me of this, and that's going to remind me
Yeah,
of this.
and John Landis was the director. I just looked it
Oh,
up.
good, good, good. Okay, yeah. See, I thought it was, but that when you start out in a dark pub like that, or you're going to town, I tell people all the time, you never know what's going on around you. People keep secrets. How many people know a scary movie that happens in a town where everybody's just keeping that secret? I mean, you've got
Yeah.
so many. You got, The Village. You've
A lot
got
of
so many.
Stephen King stories are like that
Yes,
too, where there's
that's the one.
and there are weird little towns like that in New England. You go into places where you think, maybe these people are vampires or werewolves or something. And
One of my favorite Stephen King stories. If you guys can look this up, oh gosh, the name is going to escape me now. Doggone it! Somebody help me. It is. It takes place in. They all take place in Bangor, Maine, I think, or Derry, but it starts out and there's a storm, and it's a short story that kicks off of Salem's Lot. Okay, and what is it? One more drink, or oh gosh, what's the name of it? Somebody will think
I know
of it.
what you're talking about, but I
Do
can't
you?
think of the name of
I
it
can't
either.
think of the name of it. But it starts out and there's a storm coming and just two guys having a drink. They know it's a big blizzard and they're just having a little shot of whiskey together, two old buddies.
One
And the
for the
door busts
road or
open.
something
One for
like
the
that.
road. Oh,
Yeah.
thank goodness, that's it. One for the road. Yay, thank you. And the guy comes, and that's what they're having. One for the road. And the door busts open. Here comes a guy the car broke down, left his daughter and his wife in the car, and he comes in and he's of course dressed from the city, like city folk. They knew right away that he was half dead, half frozen to death, and they got him to come around, and sure enough he had turned down the road to Salem's Lot, and they're all hesitant to take him back. And I will tell you the whole story if you hadn't heard it, but look up the narrated version of that story on YouTube, and the man who reads that, the heavy Maine accent, yup, and all that is so good. It's so good, and it's the creepiest vampire story. I'm telling you, I don't want to give it away, but it's so good. It's one of my absolute
It
favorites.
is excellent.
One of my favorites.
Davy Jones Locker. It says he's in Deep Woods, Washington State. Where in
Wow.
Washington State are you, Davy Jones? I'm headed up, not this coming Saturday, but the next Saturday. I'm taking a small film crew and going up on Mount St. Helens and around that area to get some stuff for missing
wow.
persons and mysteries.
Hey, Sue. Sue made it in. Hey, hon. I hope we didn't go over your favorite monster yet. I'm glad you made it in. She says hi to everybody.
Hi,
And
Sue.
the howling. I forgot about the howling. Oh,
Yeah,
gosh. That
that
was
one.
a good one.
That had some good
Thanks, Leanne.
change scenes in there, too.
It did.
And
It did.
that made me think of Scanners. It was out about the same
Oh.
time. Remember Scanners where their heads
Yes.
would blow up? That
Yeah.
looked so real. I
It
was
did.
convinced that they actually took like cadavers and blew their heads up or something.
Yeah. I mean, all of those like that were crazy. Okay, out of all of the old Universal movie ones, you got the Creature from Black Lagoon, the Mummy, Dracula, Phantom of the Opera, who am I missing? The Werewolf. Out of all those, what's your favorite in the chat? Pop that up there and tell me what your favorite one was, and if you want to tell us why, that's great.
The first Evil Dead, that was an excellent movie. That was scary too. Just
It
the
was different.
cinematography there, where it looked like something was chasing him through the woods, and the camera just flying through the trees and stuff, and then it would just stop on the person. It wasn't being chased or anything, but it looked like a chase scene. And same with Phantasm. Remember the guy, the tall man in the funeral home with the flying silver balls that could drill into your head and suck the blood out?
Oh, ooh, yeah. Ooh.
Phantasm. Saw
Yeah.
that one in the theaters.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite.
Boy.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite monster movies. That thing,
Oh,
the
that
whole
was
thing was
creepy.
just so creepy. They got a little silly with it in some of the later uh, chapters of it, but the first one is just an absolute classic.
They wanted to see my mug. See my mug? Here's my
Um,
mug right here. See,
I-
it's got a little crow. Look at it, cute. Look at it,
that's
cute.
awesome.
Nothing like drinking sweet tea out of a skull. To all my southern friends. It's
I
not quite
saw
a
a
mason
T-shirt
jar.
the other day. It says, "Touch my coffee, and I'll drink it out of your skull."
There you go. So anyway, yeah, my favorite. Oh, vampires. A lot of vampires. The Thing. Oh, The Thing. Boy, if that's not that movie right there was totally underrated. I think that was brilliantly done. The Thing, the original one, with who was that? Not Chris
James
Christopherson.
James Arness.
Yes, James Arness. The Thing. Oh wow, yeah, wow.
And
All of
even the
those.
remake, any of John Carpenter's movies from
Oh,
that period,
oh,
the remake of The Thing.
yeah.
What was the other one he did? Ghosts of Mars.
Yes,
That one was scary.
that was real
Of
scary.
course, the original Halloween.
Who
He
did
just,
Body Snatchers? Do you remember that when that came
yeah,
back?
I
And that
don't.
was black and white. Wasn't it the Pod People? Wasn't that
Yeah,
that
the
one?
very first invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah, that was creepy. That was really creepy.
Laura Stevens, bring your hiking boots and come on. I can always use another hand on the crew. But I'm hitting Mount St. Helens, uh,
Yep.
probably close to Mount Rainier, at least get some background shots of Rainier. And there's a little haunted town there that I'm going to go check out that's just beyond the Gifford Pinchot National Forest. So a lot of creepy places, a lot of stuff going on there. You'll see it in videos coming up on Missing Persons and Mysteries.
Nice. Very nice. I'm hearing a lot of good ones. Halloween, of course. I'm hearing Body Snatchers. I'm hearing It. I'm
Pumpkinhead,
hearing
do you remember
Halloween.
Pumpkinhead?
Pumpkinhead, yeah. I remember Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
That was one of
Yep.
those. It was just so bad it was good.
Yeah. And the
Back in the,
Blob. Let's not forget the Blob. The original Blob was Steve McQueen.
yeah,
Pretty darn creepy. I mean, right away they got me with the kitten that got caught, and I'm like, oh god, I can't watch this. But I made myself stick through it, and I'm glad I did. It was a pretty good movie. All of those, like in the late '70s, so many came out. Like then they started doing the disaster movies and stuff. That was really big. But The Howling, like Leanne said, that I had forgotten all about that. I remember I was working in a factory. I think it's still here. Air Cruisers and here in New Jersey, and somebody got cable and wanted to have a Saturday night show, and it was going to be on, and we all got together, and man, that was something else,
yeah.
Exorcist, yep, there we
Exorcist.
go.
I didn't see
Yep.
that until I was an adult. But yeah,
Pumpkinhead, here
when
we go.
we got cable
Pumpkinhead,
when I was like a junior or senior in high school,
yep.
and my neighborhood was one of the first ones to get it in our area. So all my friends from school wanted to come over to my house and watch HBO and Showtime. And it's still such just a new and marvelous thing at that point,
It was,
it's like real Hollywood movies on your TV, and then
crazy.
MTV started, and then that was the other thing. People would pile up, and we'd sit and watch
It's
videos for hours
after
and
video
hours
after
and hours and
video.
hours. Yeah, you sit there, and before you know it, you've been sitting there like 6 hours watching videos.
Absolutely. And some of them, especially back in when it first started, there was some monsters going on in there too.
Yeah.
Cabin Fever, Burnt Offerings. Oh, Burnt
Those are
Offerings
good.
is a good one.
Burnt Offerings is good. Jeepers
Creepers.
Creepers.
Oh,
I liked that one until they showed Monster.
yeah.
That kind of ruined it for
Ooh.
me after I saw it. If they had not shown it, it would have been 10 times scarier.
Poltergeist. One of my all-time favorites, the original Poltergeist. Boy,
Poltergeist, and then
let
the
me
other
tell you
one that
something.
had the priest in it, the Hello Caroline, the guy with the hat and the when they were in
Oh,
the
that was
shopping
the
mall.
second one.
Yeah, that one was
Hello,
even
little
creepier to me.
girl.
Yeah,
Yeah, that whole story was insane because he was a. Well, you didn't find it out till really more the second one. You kind of got pieces of it in the first one, but the thing that got me was how well they did it. Like when people ask me, is there movies I can watch that show me? Of course, my first one is what I said in the beginning. The Times of Our Lives with Abbott and Costello, and I still can't believe I'm saying Abbott and Costello, but it was good. It was really good, and Poltergeist was one of them. Sixth Sense for me, absolutely.
and
The
one that's
others.
just fun
Yeah.
Ghost and Mr. Chicken with Don Knotts.
Oh, I love that one.
I loved that when I was a
Oh,
kid.
I love that so much.
And
Ghost
there's
and Mr.
another
Chicken.
one similar to that called Hillbillies in a Haunted House.
Oh, I hadn't
It
seen
just
that one.
that's a good one. It's
I
kind
gotta
of, I
look
think
that
the
up.
same people that did like the Ma and Pa Kettle films.
Oh,
If you ever
oh,
saw
those
any
were
of
good.
those,
Those were good. Those were really good.
but
Yep.
another one, and I use this as for some of the stuff I'm writing now for the film I'm working on for next year. One of the things I drew inspiration from is a film called Race with the Devil from the '70s. Do you remember that
Oh,
one?
yes, I
Two
do.
couples in their RV. They're
So
traveling
creepy.
out into the desert. They witness a like a ritual murder
In a
out there,
coven.
and then these cultists are chasing them. And they're like open the cabinets in their RV, and there's rattlesnakes in there, and they're sitting in their RV at night, and a circle of flame, flashes up around them. It was just, I still remember the tagline for the commercials. If you're going to race with the devil, you better be able to run like hell or something like that.
Yes,
Drive like
yes.
hell or run like hell or
And
something.
that was
But
like the way they did the whole layout of those. They'd really grab you in. I mean, that was even after. Gosh, some of those '70 movies were so good.
they
All the ones
were.
that Hope Lang were in were banging. They were just so good, because she did one. Oh gosh, I wish I could remember the name of it. She was on a farm. Now, like I said, the younger people aren't going to remember Hope Lang, but she was this, blonde-headed girl. She was in so many of these movies.
She played Fay Ray's part in the remake of King Kong from the
Did she?
'70s. I believe
I did
so.
not know that. I did not know that. But she went to one, and the creepy part of this was, again, you showing up in the town, you think everybody's really nice, kind of very much like a Rosemary's Baby kind of thing, where she thinks everybody's, helping her. There's this creepy little girl. And boy, that girl was creepy too. She was in a lot of movies. She had long blonde hair and just creepy. And it turns out everything is good. The husband's always away because he's a doctor or something. And the next thing you know, she's been lured in by a coven of witches, and she was a witch and got away and lived, and the others died. So they had been after her all this time. And they kill her by putting her under a door and putting rocks on top of it. And the whole time they were all in on it and all against her. And that just creeps me out. Very much like Rosemary's Baby and some of these other, took a wrong turn and wound up in the wrong town kind of places. That one was really good. And I remembered another one that Barbara Stanwyck was in. And I'm going to have to look this one up. So if you want to tell a story, Steve, I have to give the name of this because it was so good.
Yeah, I misnamed Hope Lang. I think that was Jessica Lang that was in the remake of
Okay, yeah,
King Kong.
Jessica Lange, yeah.
No relation, but Hope Lang was in a lot of stuff. Early TV show, The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, if you remember that, where there
I
was
loved that movie.
a
The
lady
original
that,
is even better than the yeah. But
yeah,
that was a show, I think. That was
it
like
was a TV show.
yeah.
Yeah,
The
lady.
movie, so good,
I haven't seen the movie,
so good.
but
Black and
yeah,
white.
she got inherited a house or bought a house or something on the coast. I think it was in Maine, and she moves in. There's a lighthouse there, and there's a ghost of a sea captain that
So good.
haunts the house. It's kind
I
of done
liked
as a
him.
comedy, but it had creepy elements to it. And
Yeah.
now one that really used to scare the bejesus out of me when I was little was Dark Shadows. Um,
Yes, I
that
love that.
was
I watched that with my grandma every soap opera.
yeah, and I'd race home from school to watch that. It came on like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I remember like my mom would be outside doing something. I would hide behind the couch and then peek up over to see what was going on Dark Shadows. But that was like a fun kind of scared. Same with Night Gallery.
Oh,
Those
let me
came
just
on
if I can
at
see
like
it.
11 o'clock on Sundays or something like that. I'd stay up and watch that and get scared silly.
Oh, you're never
Yeah,
gonna be able to see the picture of Hope Lang, but that's her.
yeah,
Pretty girl. Yeah, she boy, I gotta find this movie.
yeah.
And it was in
Jessica
the
Lange was the
'70s.
one that was in King Kong in 1976.
Yep.
I was close.
The Ghost of Mrs. Muir was 1968. The movie. Yeah, it was so good. And oh, what's his name played the part? But I gotta find that farm one. Oh gosh, Crowhaven Farm. Thank you.
Yeah, oh, that's
Crowhaven
excellent.
Farm. So good. And I'm telling you what, you'd be glad you watched it. Because I often wonder if things like that don't happen. If that's where you get your bloodline curses and your bloodline attachments and stuff, and then you get called back to a certain place. I just have to have that house. It's calling me. first of all, you got to ask yourself, why is it calling you? And what's it saying? What's the message? Because that gets so crazy. But oh man, some of those old, the children and Children of the Corn,
Yeah.
Motel Hell. Oh, there's some really good ones in
Farmer
here.
Vincent's sausage there that he made at Motel Hell.
Motel.
Do you remember it was a TV miniseries from the late 70s called The Dark Secret of Harvest Home?
Yes.
It had Betty Davis in it. That was scary.
Oh.
Occasionally
Betty
they'll
Davis.
knock it out of the park and get one on TV that, was scarier than a lot of movies. Salem's Lot is another. That was a made-for-TV movie, the original with David Soul and Lance Kerwin.
Oh man. Oh, I don't know. I don't know that one. R. Young is asking, did the movie you're talking about have something to do with the women bringing a raw hamburger to the new woman? Why does that sound familiar, Steve?
I don't know, but it does. I was just sitting here thinking,
was that Rosemary's Baby where she was eating raw meat?
maybe it was where they were telling her it was good for the baby or whatever. And
Yeah,
then,
I think
he
it
has
was.
his father's eyes, but his father's eyes are
But
brown.
his father's eyes. Oh God.
His father is
I'll
Satan.
tell you what, that book was, a whole lot. The movie was creepy, and fun fact: Frank Sinatra told Mia Farrow if she made that movie, he'd divorce her. And when she was making the movie, she got an envelope with divorce papers.
Yep,
in it.
he did it, but that launched her whole career, and
Yep.
I don't think anybody could have played that role like she
I
did.
don't
She was
either.
perfect, just that
Yeah.
little pixie haircut and just a thin, waif-like, kind of scared of her own shadow type person, and
Oh wow.
she played it to the hilt.
We have a new person in the chat here that said he just kind of stumbled upon us in his feed. Well, welcome in. I don't know how to say your name. It's Sirac 1331 maybe. Welcome
Yeah,
in.
he's
Welcome
been
in.
to some of my shows. He's a great guy.
Oh
Thanks,
wow.
Sirac. I'm
Welcome in.
glad that you got it, probably from coming to my shows and stuff, that this showed up in your feed.
There you go. Well,
Good,
if
good to
you'd
see you.
be so kind, subscribe and you'll catch Steve here a lot. We talk like this all the time. Wicker Man. There's another one.
That was the original one. Didn't care for the Nick Cage one.
Oh, me either.
Yeah, but the one with
Me either.
what was the guy's name? It was the Equalizer, Edward.
Oh, it's lost
I
me.
can't remember, but the original Wicker Man. That was an excellent movie.
Yeah, it really was.
And,
I just think they put more thought in them back then. Instead of so much CGI and things like that, the monsters had like more emotion, and you could just. Thank you so much, Zach. I appreciate that. We're trying to get to 1,000. Thank you so much for coming in. I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, any of my folks that haven't subscribed, please subscribe, share it out, get us many people in here as we can.
Oh, look here. Pseudonym is sharing something about a haunting in Connecticut. So, yeah, not bad, but I'll tell you, if you want to get the original story, now, he's saying she's saying the book based on this movie, In a Dark Place. Okay, yeah. The first time I heard of a haunting I can't even speak. Ghost got my tongue. The Haunting in Connecticut was on a show called A Haunting, where Bill Bean's story was on there too. And so many good, they actually did a really good job on that. But I think they moved into a house that used to be a morgue, and actually the kids slept in the room together that used to be the morgue. Now, you would talk about a place that's got a lot of, attachment stuck to it. I mean, I would imagine a morgue, because if they follow their body, most of the time they don't, but I don't know, it just seems to me to be creepy, and who's to know what's happening in there and what they're doing with the bodies and stuff, think about it. Creep Show was good too.
Yeah, Creep Show. And another genre I liked was for the nature gets revenge movies, like The Birds or Frogs.
Yes.
Do you remember Frogs from, I think, 72?
I don't remember Frogs,
with
but I
Sam
remember
Elliott
Birds.
in there before he was Sam Elliott,
Before
basically.
he was Sam Elliott. But that's another thing I was going to mention tonight
The
about
Prophecy.
Alfred Hitchcock. Oh yeah, that's good. Prophecy was really good. Alfred Hitchcock would often, in some movies he made different inanimate objects the scary monster. But in The Birds, it was the birds, of course, and what was causing the birds to attack and do these things. And his big thing was something I always like, is like character development and the and how everybody reacts to a crisis like that.
Yeah.
Who
And
becomes
he was
who.
just a master. I mean, have
Yes.
you ever seen Lifeboat? It's
Yes.
literally just people in a lifeboat, and that's the whole movie.
Amazing.
But it's the
Yeah.
way they interact and they play off one another. There's
Good
so
stuff.
many plots and subplots there,
Hmm.
and you don't realize it until it's over. But you just spent 2.5 hours watching six people in a lifeboat.
Right. And
They get
those are
mad at
so
the
good, though.
skipper and throw him over because he's holding out on the salt pills or water or whatever it was.
Oh,
And
wow. Yeah. Yeah.
so much drama there. And he liked to show how that when it came right down to it, the tragedy and things like that can bring out the best of people, and it can bring out the absolute worst of people.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Oh, Grandpa C's got to go. See you later, love. Thanks for stopping in.
Good
Be
night,
well.
Grandpa.
Be well. We love you. Yeah, so all of those coming up through the 60s, 70s, of course, like the original Universal. When were they around, Steve? Was it the 40s?
Universal, I want to say they started in the 40s.
Okay. I thought so too, because I know Abbott and Costello were very active early, late 30s all the way through, because that one was 1938, and that was something else. But going through all of those, I'd have to say
Yeah, it
my
says here
absolute
Wikipedia
favorite.
from the 1930s through the 50s.
Okay.
So
Yep. And that's amazing what they could do back then. My absolute favorite was the Invisible Man. And I don't know what it was about him.
that one was creepy. But when he
he
took that stuff off, or like when they show him where he's running around and he's
I
just a
know.
pair of pants or
Yeah,
whatever, and they're
yeah.
trying to catch
And
him.
like I had in the film, they're chasing the shirt, and he's chasing them around because he'd
Yeah.
mess with people, But I found it so interesting, like when he'd go and he'd smoke a cigarette, and it would just be the cigarette floating in the smoke, and you'd see the smoke going down in his lungs and coming
Yeah.
back up. And he'd drink something and all that, and of course he was a trickster. He was something else. He was a character to begin with. I don't remember who played that part, but I absolutely
Remember
just
either, but
loved
that
him.
was excellent.
And I'll tell you something, the new one is not bad.
I haven't seen it.
The new Invisible Man is not bad. I kind of sat down and I was like, this isn't going to be, you know what I mean? It can't top that old stuff. But I was pleasantly surprised with the new one. So if anybody hasn't seen the new Invisible Man movie, please do. It's really well done, I thought.
And Sirach is mentioning films that are based on real events. One of my favorites is The Entity,
Oh, yeah.
where the lady was raped by that,
Two of them.
whatever it was. Yeah, and I've driven by that house out in Culver City and took pictures of it, but I wouldn't dare go in there.
No, I wouldn't either. And I read the book before I saw the movie, and I read some of the studies by Barry Taft and
Talbot,
everything else.
Taft, yeah.
Yeah, because by then I was already, digging and digging and digging. I was a young teenager, and that one got me. And I didn't want to say anything, but a friend of ours has had not a situation, but had mentioned something about seeing a large something, and then a smaller something, and that was also in The Entity. That was the first. I mean, I was probably 11 when I was trying to study that case. I mean, that just shows you how far back Steve and I go in this.
Yeah.
And it had a minion. You have your different levels of demons and things like that, just like you do if you think about aliens and stuff. They always say, like, the grays are kind of the worker bees, and then there's a larger gray that looks a little bit different that's kind of in charge of those, and then there's something else in charge of them, and you figure, why not? Why would there just be one kind, But that's what reminded me of that, because that was the first time I ever heard, because when they were getting the prints in the bathroom on the shower, or maybe it was the mirror, you would see the large hands, and then you see the little ones or bruises on her, same thing. But The Entity was absolutely incredible, and the very last part when they freeze it and you can see how really big and awful it was, just horrible. Oh, okay. Chris Jarvis here. Ooh, check this one out. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. The lady in The Entity almost described it as a large muscular genie. Yeah, similar to that, absolutely. I mean, it was horrible the way these things, whether it was like a minion from hell, or an extra dimensional, or whatever it could be, because Steve and I talk about all the time, portals. You don't know what's coming and going. you know? So who knows? Everybody wants to put labels, and you can't always do
Yeah.
that. But they were definitely evil, they were definitely bad, and they were definitely trying to break that family down, and that's what happens, you
Well,
know,
yeah, would
most
attack
of
her in
these.
front of her kids and things. They have to
Yes.
sit there and watch their mom flung around the room and get
Yep.
slapped and her hair pulled and
Yep.
assaulted and stuff.
Yep. And that's what happened to Bill Bean.
Yeah.
I mean, like so many of these things come together, and now we're starting to see in this time frame, you know, like where we are now, there's so much information and people like this in the chat. I mean, I can't imagine having something like this in the 60s or 70s, because you sure didn't go to school and talk about it, you
Yeah.
know. And, you know, Leonard Nimoy wasn't really putting it all out there either. He'd talk into, you know, into sightings and stuff, and, you know, and all that.
In
You know,
Search
they
of.
have it. In
Love
Search
that
of.
show.
That's
That was
it.
like the only creepy show back at that time that you could find.
Yep, yep. Oh, on the entity, you're probably not going to want to buy that, because I would just rent it and then give it back, because you're not going to keep that one in your house.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
And pseudonyms talking about the real pics from inside the house are astounding. Where the
Oh.
investigator's up in the attic and he
missed
ends
that.
up with like a
Yeah,
rope
yeah.
around his neck tied to a nail.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Oh, there was so much that went on there, and it, you know, they got the back and forth, and it was kind of like the Sally case, where, you know, these guys. I just wanted parapsychology. That was the big thing in the 70s. I'm
Yeah.
a parapsychologist, you know. And I love, you know, Barry. Barry is probably going to be on the show. He's a great guy, and he's so smart, and he's got so much. The analytical scientific mind he has is just, you know, you want to tap all that. But that sometimes I find that now too with, you know, people that are very into tech and things like that. I think we've almost worked that out to where paranormal groups now are just so I want to say advanced, but not just advanced in the tech, advanced in their thinking. They really are starting to work together, because I actually watched two parapsychologists sitting at a table with a guy who didn't have a shirt on and was getting scratched right in front of them on camera, multiple cameras live, and they're trying to. They're still trying to be skeptical and figure it's a hoax. I mean, explain it to me. Is there some little invisible guy inside with a knife cutting them from the inside out? Because there's nothing here. You know, they're taking their hands and going around like they're thinking it's magic or something. And I guess if you look at it that way, I saw, you know, what was his name? Chris, what's that magician that walks through, you know, walks on water and walks through glass and
Oh, that's
puts,
all of them. Chris Angel.
yeah, and Chris Angel do all kind of things. So I guess it could be magic, you know, but they couldn't place it. And then you mix it with everything else, you know. And
Well, there are ways to fake stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
for example, in The Exorcist, where the writing is appearing on Linda Blair's skin, I read about the process that the special effects guy used to do that.
Okay,
But it
tell us.
had to be prepared in advance. And it was a type of put one chemical on her skin, like some sort of latex, and then would write the stuff with another chemical, and then while they were filming, it would start to cure or whatever it was doing, and would make the scratches in the writing appear. So it can be done, but not without a lot of footfall and stuff beforehand, and it
Right.
would be evident that something was being faked.
And you're in a small kitchen with, like, you know, equipment crew, cameramen, scientists, and everybody just waiting for you to flinch.
And
you know?
that's the whole thing about that. I mean, just about anything paranormal, you can find a way to fake it. You can
Yeah.
find a way to do it and hoax it, but that doesn't mean everything is. Like,
Yeah.
for example, the night walkers. That's
There
one
you
of
go.
the scariest things I've ever seen. And watch on Fact and Fake, they built, probably a several $1,000 puppet rig. They're like, well, yeah, we can do it. See, but there's no place in that yard for a puppet rig.
There you go.
You would have seen it on the sidewalk. Somebody'd have to operate that. It took like 3 people to operate it, one to move it, one to make it walk, and one to.
And that
So-
was the one that just looked like pants.
Yeah, just a
walking.
pair of pants, a hammer
Yeah, real
pants
tall,
walking
like
through
on
the yard.
stilts. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was pretty creepy.
That's one of the
yeah.
creepiest things I've ever seen.
Right. Now, did you see the one in the video? And it had like that little Dobby creature walking.
Yeah.
If they're down, the CTV caught it going down his driveway, and I made sure I put that in because Steve and I have often talked about I forget what they're called, the creepers or the stick walkers. Now the stick walkers have been seen in other places not far from there. One of them was like 14 miles away, another one was 30 something miles away, and they caught the same thing on their outdoor camera or down the driveway or whatever with those like things walking. And that's creepy. What the heck is that? Doesn't make any sense. But that little creature, did you see the way he was walking in that film?
Yeah, it just.
And his legs just.
I don't think anybody that was faking it would know to give it an unusual gait like that or make it walk like its hips were on swivels or something. I don't know. It just. I can't say for sure anybody faking could do anything, but
yeah.
Same with some of the Bigfoot stuff. I met Bob Gimlin a couple of weekends ago, and
you did, yeah.
he's the most sincere person.
Mm-hmm.
He was almost 90. He's pushing 90 now.
Yeah.
And he was just so happy to see me. I think he thought he knew me from somewhere.
Oh, wow.
Maybe he does. Maybe he listens to my YouTube channel.
It could be.
But anyway, if you look at that film, the Patterson Gimlin film, just the way it walks and the breast swinging and stuff.
Yeah.
People that were hoaxing are not going to think, well, let's make sure the breasts move.
Yeah.
Nobody, I don't think, is going to go into that much detail
and
push
think
that
it's
much
really
thought
awful.
if it was a man in an ape suit.
Yeah, the way people try to discount things. But then again, you got to kind of know, too, and that's something you and I have talked out about a lot, too. That's why I kind of like things like Jeremy is involved with, like, the Black Vault and things like that, because if you have... I don't know how many different things I could put up and say I've got this or, and you too. And you just don't want to go through it. You know, if I put something up like I got this picture, don't even bother telling me that I got it because I was standing in the field by myself when I was taking those pictures.
And you see that. And everybody's an expert on the internet. I saw something somebody had put up the other day. It was a picture of what appears to be some sort of creature, Bigfoot type creature out walking. And the first comment was like, "Oh, I looked at this. It's 100% fake."
No, it's not. I'm sorry.
Don't you just love that, people?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I looked at it. I can tell you it's 100% fake.
Right.
Where's your proof? Where's your study? Let's see a peer-reviewed study. Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of stuff that really messed things up too. You get like the ghost app where you can put the picture of the ghost there, but you can tell, and I've always thought about it. The reason I think it doesn't upset me, but I just, I'm like, I don't like it. We don't do that on like our group pages and stuff that we're involved in. It's just if somebody puts something and go, what do you think? And
give them the benefit of the doubt. If this is real, it's amazing.
Right. And
if it's fake, you did a good job.
What you think, if you're asking what you think, and it's got something and it's hanging like, how many different times have we seen a bug hanging right in front of the video that it might look like something walking around, but when you look, you can tell it's a spider and it's got a little bit of shiny thing there. That's just people asking what you think and help them figure out what it might be, or they've got dust or a bug, but you don't go at them like they're trying to pull one over on you if they're asking, what do you think here, because they don't know. They've not been through 1,000 pictures or 1,000 videos or hours and hours and hours of checking video for stuff,
Or they've never been that person that stood there and watched it happen.
Right.
You and I both, we've seen things.
Yes.
Don't have any photographic or video evidence of it, but I know what I saw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then for somebody to stand in your face, well, you didn't see that. That's not real. You just made that up. That doesn't happen. That can't exist.
That's right.
Fight me. Because I saw it.
Well,
I know what I saw.
Yeah, and like I've stayed there too, and many things happen. And a lot of times when things happen, it's like the best weddings I've done in floral design. I'm too busy to take pictures. You know what I mean? They're gone. Ask the bride, she's got them. I mean,
Laura, I did. I was looking at something on my phone on Facebook, and it tried to play a clip, and that was. That
was not an EVP. We get them,
no EVPs. We do get them sometimes.
Yes, we do.
We've had him on. We were on with Soraya one time, and after the show, he was like, "Who was that talking in the background?" Mm-hmm. And we thought it was somebody in his studio. Like, wasn't it somebody in the radio station? Mm-hmm. He's like, "No, it's just me and the cat here." And
Soraya would not lie.
And Cisco's I'm in the garage, and I'm like, I'm here with Mulder, but there was a male voice that we would hear, and it was like only on one side of the audio, so it was creepy. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, that was a good phone call. That's the one where I hung up and go, okay, now I got to go listen to it and go help this guy. Who is it? What's going on? Because, you figure you pick up stuff. That's why we're hoping that, the Titanic box, as it goes around, it's going to pick up, of course, energy from each of us. But, don't volunteer to do this if it's your intent. We want people with good intent that
Yeah,
are
if you're
going
going to get scared,
to
don't
do
get
this
it
with,
and then
yeah.
throw it out in the yard when
Yeah,
something
please
happens.
please don't do that. Please don't do that. So yeah,
Excuse me.
so like I said, if you want to volunteer, you shoot Steve an email. You want to give your email, or
Yeah,
you want him
Steve
to catch?
Stockton 81 at gmail.com. If one of your mods could drop that in the chat
Sure,
for me,
sure.
that'd be great.
And
Also,
go
if
ahead.
there's anybody out there that has relatives that were on the Titanic, you would be an excellent person to
Yes.
participate in this.
Oh, so true. Look back
Um,
and see. Yeah, there's a lot of them. There really
there's a
is.
website you can go to, and I think it's from Ancestry.com or one of those. They actually have the manifest, the ship's manifest there, and you can look through there and see if you can find a relative. But we'll get some people on board like that. It'd be great. But honestly, I mean, I don't. It would have to be really, really active for you to have a strange experience. Now, this is coming from somebody that when I was a kid, we had a human skull in a glass cabinet out in our garage,
Because
and
that's Steve. That's what the kind of stuff Steve does. Just saying.
so it was my dad's. It was a Native American skull. It was later.
Oh, thank you.
It was later put back where it belonged.
Thank you.
But he bought it from somebody with that intention of going and reburying it because it's not something you should own. But my mom wouldn't let it in the house, but we did have it in the garage for a period of time, and it was a strange thing. But it didn't bother me in the sense that it needed to go back into a burial mound or somewhere. Because
Absolutely.
arrowheads and spear points, that's one thing, but when you've got somebody's skull,
Yeah.
that's a little
That's a
much.
little different. That's a
So
little different. And
we
even
took
if
it.
the person isn't stuck, that depending on how they are, or whether they're reincarnated or not reincarnated, whatever, you know, it's good. It's a disturbance, and I think that
Yeah,
any time that you have that, I mean, how many times have you heard, well, your house is built on a graveyard, they just moved the stones,
yeah,
poltergeist.
yeah.
Well, that's really happened.
And
I
that
think,
does really happen. I know of a
yes,
place where
yeah.
a developer got sued. He paid to have the stones moved, but
Mm-hmm.
the coffins were still in the ground. Still are, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and that's just,
But like I said, if you can handle a skull in your garage, then and
wow.
again, I don't remember any activity specifically tied to that, but there was activity all around that house and property. But it was reburied back and ceremoniously done so
Thank
where it
you.
was supposed to be.
Thank you. That reminded me, I don't know why, but I was just thinking about what I usually say is so much of the poltergeist in the original poltergeist movie absolutely could happen. From the time where he's in the mirror and he's looking, and it's basically making you see, messing with your perception that his face was bleeding and coming apart, and the maggots in the steak and all that stuff. All that can happen, absolutely. The thing that got me was when they're standing in the hallway and all of the souls are coming down the stairs. And you can see the ghosts, and then you saw the ball of light, but you saw the ghost too. That's so real looking. I'm telling you right now, that's how it looks most of the time.
Yeah.
If you see pieces, not the whole manifestation. Steve and I have 100 stories just where somebody saw a pair of pants or a pair of boots walking down the trail at a Civil War thing or something. Just the
To
boots.
me, that's scarier than anything, any full body apparition.
Hmm.
There's Mammoth Cave in Kentucky. They've seen a pair of legs with work boots and stuff on running down the hill, just the legs. And then there's a hotel in Gatlinburg that's haunted, Gatlinburg, Tennessee. People were murdered there back in the, I think it was late 70s, early 80s. And the woman got out of the room and ran across the parking lot. They caught her and brought her back in and murdered her. And they claim that they see her from the knees down
Mm,
run across the parking lot and go around a water
my
spray
goodness.
thing there. So it's, I don't understand those partial. I think that's probably more of a residual
It could
energy or
be.
something, but
It
still,
could
I would
be.
rather see the whole thing than just the legs or the hand. Place
It's
I stayed in the Philippines, they talked about they would see a baby's arm come out of the wall and try to grab people when they walked by. I have a concrete wall.
mm,
Now,
absolutely.
I theorized that there was probably an infant that was entombed in there. But they're like, we don't know. It was here when we got here. So
Janet's asking if I was in on the one with the skull. No, I was not. That was Steve. That was Steve's garage, not mine.
yeah, that's my dad collected arrowheads and things, and over where he grew up, we used to find a lot. They had 900 acres over there in Pinterest County, Tennessee, backed up to what's now the Big South Fork National Park, which is on the other side of the river there. And you could go in the spring after the first, when the cloud, then the first rain, go after that, you could find arrowheads on the ground. There was bluffs there where we could go and find pottery shards and things like that. Well, there were mounds over there. We knew to leave the burial mounds alone. Well, some guy called my dad one time and had an arrowhead collection that he wanted to sell. My dad went to look at it and he was interested in it. And the guy was like, and I've got this too. And it was a skull that he had taken out of a burial mound. And my dad was like, well, that needs to go back. And the guy's like, well, I'll sell it to you and you can put it back. And my dad was like, okay. So he bought it. I mean, which he shouldn't have done because I hated that the guy profited off of it. But then my dad knew where he had found this stuff at. And yeah, it was in our garage for till he had time off to go do it, probably, I want to say 6 weeks or so.
Right.
And my mom was like, you're not having that thing in the house.
Yeah. Well, I got a little secret for you because something that, I'm always saying, an elder told me this or an elder told me that, or my grandmother was an elder. But, one of the things I was told before, it's like, that's all right. They'll get him when he's on the other side.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to go through.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? The guy who did it. Not your dad, not you, because you guys did the right thing. But,
and I think that's why we didn't have anything bad off of it.
Right.
The spirit of that native knew that we were going to put his head back at least close to where it belonged.
Yeah, I just laugh sometimes when people do things to think they got away with it. You know what I mean? It's like, I liken it to, I had this one person I was trying to talk to, but it's like, you don't understand. I don't believe in any of that stuff. And I'm like, well, disbelief in gravity, is not going to keep you from falling down the stairs. Things are what they are. And if you keep messing with them and you keep thinking because your own ego and arrogance and everything builds off of it, and right now they're just kind of waiting. Time is on my side, just like in that movie Fallen with the demon that would say, time is on my side. They got all the time in the world. And I said, it's very much like you standing on the beach, looking at the ocean and the waves, and you're on dry land, and you're out there and you're making fun of the sharks. And then something happens one day, you wind up in their territory, and you're going to remember. And you got to think about stuff like that. You are responsible for the things you do here. And I've known many a shaman that have had to go through and to get somebody or to help somebody or to go through, their trials and their training and stuff like that. And they'll tell you if times they've had to go in there and help people that got stuck like that. So you just remember you're responsible. So try to be cool.
Anytime we were ever relic hunting, particularly under the bluffs and stuff, if we started finding bones, then we knew, we need to leave this alone. And Native American bones, they look different. You can tell when it's Native American. There is actually a reddish tint to the bones. Yep. The only other thing, the tinted bones like that, is a certain type of squirrel and a fox will have a red hue to the bone.
There you go.
So yeah,
Todd's got it. The grave robber likely did not profit, as Lady Sister said. And that's it. That's it. Because
knowing the guy, he probably took that and money and bet it on something and lost, because that's the kind of guy he was.
Right. And then maybe had trouble and everything else. And it works the opposite way, too, because, if somebody thinks that they have a curse, it's almost like they curse themselves, or what I mean?
You can think it on to you.
Yeah, and I've had people that I had a friend. He was a big Native American dude. He was Creek, red stick, and red stick. They have a red streak in some of them. I'm telling you, wonderful, wonderful people. But man, what warriors, and methodical. A lot of Native American tribes all had their thing. The Pawnee, all of them. But just fantastic, warring and everything else. It was just so much of the military, American military training and, customs and the slogans are all taken from Native American stuff. Even like their mobile hospitals and how they can pack up and move real quick. All that's taken from Native American, goes way back to the cavalry. They learned a lot, which, it's a lot to learn from. It was a lot of wonderful tribes.
What is it, Harvard, that has a Skull and Bones Society that a lot of presidents have been a member of?
Yes.
They supposedly have Geronimo's skull, although I heard that there was a raid on that place and the skull was taken back.
It's taken back.
They just don't talk about it. They have another skull in there now, but some Native Americans got pissed and went and got Geronimo's bones out of there.
Yep. And again, they will pay. Geronimo was something else. I don't know what you've all heard, but to stand and be a warrior for that long, so many, were decent, and tried to save their people. So, what would you fight to? What last would you fight to save, your people? So that's the way that was. But and then to be to be discarded and made fun of and be part of the stuff that they're involved in, just. Let's just put it this way: they're not going to get away with it. I'm telling you right now. I've seen too much.
It'll catch up with you eventually. Anything you do, your chickens will come home to roost, as my dad used to say.
Yep, and that's kind of like when we started this. We said that a lot of times human beings can be the worst monsters. The things that human beings do to each other with indifference. Believe me, they find out later what they did, and they have to go through that and. And it's not pretty. I mean, you're going to spend a little bit more time in the my voodoo friend's way of putting it, into the unseelie fae, or purgatory in the darkness, and like that call I got for, oh gosh, that's crazy. But on the monsters now, on the cryptids, I showed some pictures, and the reason I showed some of the older pictures into the new was because when I was young, and I know Steve too, we used to read things like Fate magazine and Ripley's Believe It or Not, and I remember the mermaid in Ripley's Believe It or Not was like a monkey head on a fish tail.
Yeah, the Fiji mermaid.
There you go. Yeah.
They took a monkey and shaved it, and taxidermied the top half of the monkey to the lower half of some kind of big fish.
Yep.
And then they toured that around the country as an actual mermaid, and people paid to see it.
Yep, absolutely. And many things. Well, one of the things that reminded me of too was it was John Wilkes Booth, was it not? His body that went around, and the wife, so many things happened to this guy's body. Supposedly, it wasn't John Wilkes Booth. It was John Wilkes Booth supposedly really didn't die. The guy that died in the barn that they said was John Wilkes Booth wasn't. He got away. Oh. And he changed his name to something St. Helens, wasn't it? Something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Then he told his story on his deathbed. Something happened where his widow or something couldn't pay to get his body out of the morgue, so he kept it for a long time. Then he sold it to a traveling fair. Yeah. And it was one of those fairs where you could go in to the trailer and you bought a ticket for a nickel or whatever. And you were supposed to put the ticket in the coffin, but most people stuck it in his mouth. And then he wound up hanging. They bought the body from there, and he wound up hanging in a physician's thing on one of those hook things or something, and they took all these nickel tickets out of his mouth.
Well, there was another one, might have been the same one, where it ended up in a fun house in like Santa Monica, California on the pier.
Could have
been. And they noticed it was needing to be touched up, thought it was falling apart, and then they realized this is an actual cadaver, and it had tickets stuffed in its mouth.
Yep.
And I think it had been some gunfighter or something that died.
Yeah.
They were able to find out who he was, and they ended up burying him somewhere.
Can you imagine?
But
grave robbers did it all the time. They just wait for a body to be buried, dig it up, and go sell it to the morgue. And it's so sad. And he's one of my favorite founding fathers, Ben Franklin. But I think Ben Franklin had some extra layers we didn't know too much about, because they just dug up a bunch of bones from under one of his houses, and of course he did the Hell Cave meetings and all that, remember? And you know, I mean, people did that. They dug up the bodies and they'd sell them for, you know, to the scientists or the medical schools for experimentation and stuff like that. So grave robbers,
Okay.
they really did that.
Todd
Crazy,
Brown
right?
says that's the story of Elmer McCurdy, and
Okay, there you go.
an Oklahoma would-be bank robber who was killed in 1911 and
Hmm.
whose embalmed body circulated through various sideshows, fun houses, and amusement parks for over 90 years.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
but yeah,
I just,
last I heard, there was a movie in 1933 that included an appearance um, of his body called Narcotic. Uh,
I've got a new person in the chat, Finn Risselfer.
yeah, that's my buddy Finn. She's the one I was telling you
Oh,
about that
Finn.
her
Oh, okay.
and her partner Maddox are going to be in my horror film.
Oh, hey,
She's
sweetie. How
awesome.
you
She's
doing?
in Arizona.
Like I said, I'm trying to catch them as I can. Aunt Edna, how you all doing? I hope you all enjoying the conversation, and I definitely want to touch on cryptids before we go through. The little guy, I've told this story so many times, and I won't tell the whole one tonight, but I had to put in for Steve that one from I almost said Zapruder film. Me and my JFK conspiracy.
Were there
sucker.
cryptids in the Zapruder film?
I
There
think
may
there
have
might
been.
have been. I think there may have
You know,
been,
that was
honey.
something I meant to bring up when you were talking about Abraham Lincoln.
Uh-huh.
I read where recently, just a few years ago, somebody that's still researching the Abraham Lincoln murder.
Mm-hmm.
Their house was broken into,
Mm-hmm.
all their notes stolen,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like warned that like you don't be messing in what you're
Yes.
messing in. You think after that how many years has that been?
I
Over
know.
100 years.
I know,
There's
and that
still
story's true.
something out there that they're trying to keep secret about the Lincoln assassination,
Yeah.
to the point that they're
There's an
tossing people's
inside job.
houses and sending death threats.
Yep.
More than 100 years after the fact.
Yep. Yep. How about that? That's really crazy. But the little one that I showed, Steve and I've told this story. That's the one that looks the most of the one I saw. I never saw. I've heard of
Littlefoot.
Bigfoot. Yeah, that's why I call him Littlefoot. But he was so sad, and I think if I hadn't been with my son, I probably would have pulled over and tried to help him because it was such a huge lost and sad emotion coming off of this poor little guy with a big old lip. We just had a little big old lip, but he looked an awful lot like that drawing that I put up there in the Bigfoot. When this is over, go back and look at that video again. You'll see it. But I think the thing that stopped me at the time is because I was being a mama bear trying to protect my son, and I'm thinking his mama's out there in that corn somewhere, so I'm pretty sure I don't want to meet Mrs. Bigfoot. But and I just kept going, but I still wonder what happened to the little fella. I saw a lot of weird cryptids out there in Alabama, near Alabama-Tennessee line. I don't know if
Yeah.
anybody here is from there, but I saw so many things. I saw that
I used
rabbit,
to travel
that
in that
platypus
area.
thing. Oh
We'd go
gosh.
from East Tennessee down into Scottsboro, Alabama, where one of my mom's brothers lived, and there's just something different about that area down there.
It is, and you can ask anybody that lives there. They see all kinds of things. I mean, you've got multiple hunters and things that go out there all the time, and it was at that time it was such a rural area. But I think again, you see so much because civilization starts pushing and everything moves. Like much in the book I wrote, where the Rougarou got pushed all the way from Louisiana up to Alabama. Oh, there he is.
There he
Elmer.
is. He was
Yeah.
reinterred
Oh,
from Los Angeles back to Guthrie, Oklahoma, and given a proper burial
wow.
in
Wow. What is that on there? Is that a
1977.
boot? Is that
Yeah,
a boot?
somebody's put a boot on
Somebody
us.
put a boot. You know what that reminds me? I know it sounds so funny, but that reminds me of, oh gosh, the traitor. Name for traitor.
Benedict Arnold.
Thank you so much. When Benedict Arnold, he was a fantastic general back in the Civil War. He really was. He was a fighter. But he had like 4 boys and nobody was getting paid. And he kept thinking he wasn't getting, his come up and his due, and him and Washington were always at it. He was really good friends with Washington, which is why it broke Washington's heart when he turned coat, right? And he was going to go over to the British. Basically, he was going to give over West Point to the British, which would have ruined the whole thing because they would have took over New York and everything else. So one of the story that the boot reminded me of is they said that, of course, this major price on his head. He had to flee to go to England, flee and stay in hiding forever. They said if they ever caught him, they would take him. He had gotten wounded, I think, 3 times in the same leg in 3 different battles. And they said that if they ever caught him, they would take him, cut off the leg, destroy his body, and bury the leg with honors. So just the leg.
There's a place there in East Tennessee where during the Civil War, a local, I'm not sure if he was captain or whatever, lost an arm, and his arm is buried under a tree there, and they gave it a full military burial.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not going to say it. How do you pronounce his name? It's 1331.
Sirach.
Sirach. I hate pronouncing people's names wrong, so forgive me. But he said he'd be an interesting guest because he's dabbled in a lot of things and most matters in the cult.
You would like having him on. He knows a lot about a lot of
we'll
different
have you
things.
on sometime. We can absolutely talk.
Another one is Todd Brown that's in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
He's studied a lot of different
We have a lot
comparative
of
religions and stuff. So.
investigators and things in here. We really do, and I think it's wonderful because that's how we all get all these ideas out, and everybody's experiences together. We're trying to learn so much. It's because it's such a big subject, and a lot of it is theory. A lot of it is your experience, what you think about that, and we try to do that and include all the ideas. I mean, there's many times I've talked to Steve with other people and got a whole new outlook on something that happened to me and a broader view. It doesn't necessarily mean what you thought was happening, but it was usually more or in depth. It's very, it's almost like ghosts or parables. I mean, there's so many layers and so many things of why it picked you to show itself to or come to you or whatever. And at the same way, I'm wondering if in some cases cryptids aren't that way. And I know we're seeing a lot more different things. And I actually marked one wrong. I wanted to say the rake and I said wraith on that one, but it was a rake. And I think they're seeing them a lot on these field cameras and CCTVs and stuff like that. I have no idea what that one was that I showed that showed up on a field camera, but it kind of looked like a guy with horns, like it looked like it was standing up on all fours, but it wasn't a deer, it was something else. I haven't heard anything about that one. Now, I have heard about Glimmerman, of course, being with Missing 411 was one of the first times I saw the picture with the bow hunter, that she was out in the tree and saw it, got a picture.
Jan Maccabee, Bruce Maccabee's wife.
There you go. And that was amazing how all that went down. And at the same time, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't there some like a football game in a high school?
Yeah, where she was at in the woods. It was just a short distance from a high school. And I think the marching band or something was out there practicing on the field, and there was some kind of UFO event happened there that all the students saw at the same moment that she was observing the Glimmerman in the trees.
Yeah.
In the tree right next to where she was, in like the next tree over.
And if nobody knows what the Glimmerman looks like, because I tried to get a good picture, but it's just a glimmer. And I think it's very close to that. What was it? I Ain't Got Time to Bleed. What was that movie? Where it wasn't Alien,
Predator.
Thank you, Predator, and it had a cloaking, and that's the same as if you guys have not read or listened to a really good interview of Robert Guthrie on Cameleo, all of that's in there, and if you think about when he wrote that, when it was going on, how far back it goes. I've seen this stuff in the military.
And if you've ever heard my story, I saw something like that one night in downtown Portland. And this was before the riots and all that. But I thought it was steam coming out of a sewer grate or something. But when I walked over to where it was, there was no grate there, but I could still see, looked like a shape, a short-statured person or a humanoid. And then when I noticed I was looking at it, just kind of squatted down. It was between a signpost and a garbage can, a permanent garbage can. And I don't know what it was, but I got out of there. I didn't waste any time because it was almost midnight. I was waiting on the last train back to my neighborhood, and nobody around. So I took off. I actually stepped out in the street against traffic.
Just to get
away from it, just to have a reason to run, because I knew if I ran, it was probably going to chase me or get me. So I was just like walking around and walked to the edge of the street, and then as soon as the light changed for the other way, I jumped out of the street and had cars honk at me and stuff, and ran across the street and just kept running and didn't stop till I was probably about 6 blocks away at another station that was more well lit and had more people waiting for a train or a bus. It was on the Transit Mall in downtown Portland.
Wow.
But
And I wonder if they're drawn, well, because they're showing up in the woods and they're showing up. We could theorize all night on whether or not that's why people are gone missing, why they feel like they're being pulled up. You hear wind on the phone's dropped and crashed, and no person.
yeah,
We've talked about portals that they could have gone into and stuff like that. I don't think it's any one thing. I really
yeah,
think
I
it's
think
a
it's a
very
bunch of
selective.
different things.
If it's a portal, it's a selective portal, but it could be. It could
Yeah,
be that a certain person, uh, you know, it it reacts to it. You
and
know what
I've
I mean? To the
wondered
energy.
about that cloaking technology. How do we know it's not in such a way that, like, maybe it's a really big poncho, and you could take somebody with you, put it around you and them,
And them,
and that would explain these people that they have video of them going into bars, and they never come back out.
and they
There's
don't come
no
back out,
right,
and there's
or
no
and then
camera.
they find them in the water.
Yeah.
There's no video of them going in the water.
Mm.
Sometimes maybe weeks later, but they only appear to have been in the water for a few days. So where
Mm.
were they in the rest of the time?
The rest of the time.
Yeah,
And
scary to think about.
blood type, and descendants like German descent and all that.
Yeah,
It's
German
just,
descent.
it's amazing to me. There's something selective going on.
And then usually people at one end or the other of the intelligence spectrum, autistic children tend to go missing, and people with PhDs tend to go missing, about the same percentage for both. But yeah, the Germanic descent, people wearing red tend to go missing. People tend to go missing near berry fields and boulder fields. And there's stories going back hundreds of years about stuff happening to people that were picking berries. That ties into the whole faith thing, that that's
Hmm.
not only their food, it's where they have their dances and their mating rituals, and you're blocking the faith when they're trying to get their groove on if you're in there picking berries.
Could be. And Aunt Edna, there was another one here that said that J. Allen Hynek's son developed the effect of the predator from account stories from his father for the movie. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Because that's where you're going to hear the truth from the older people that are sitting around telling it. And here, Aunt Edna says, "I wonder if they grab you. You are also cloaked."
That's what
Simply
I was
disappear.
thinking, that
Yep,
either
could
something,
be.
whatever the technology is, however it works, that anything they've got a hold of, it cloaks it as well. Would make sense. That would
Yeah.
answer a lot of questions.
It would, and like we say all the time on these shows. I mean, maybe we're not supposed to know the answers, and it always creeps me out because I always think of that movie, The Vanishing, where the guy keeps through the whole movie he's trying to find out what happened to his girlfriend that went missing, and the guy finally says, "I'll show you," and he knocks him out and he shows him he buried her alive, and he finds himself buried alive in the coffin, and he found out what happened to her. So sometimes we probably don't need to be searching too deep, because sometimes we don't want to know.
Yeah.
you know
Well, that's what we always say. We're not looking for answers anymore. We're just
Right.
looking for the next set of questions.
Right, the next set of questions, like what happened to Chupacabra? I can remember 25 years ago, Chupacabra was the big thing. And I saw a film that I can't find anymore that was school children coming home from, walking home from school. And they got a video of them.
I've seen
and,
that, but
and
you're
they
right.
were
You can't
throwing
find
rocks.
it. It's like it's been scrubbed.
Yeah, they
And
were
there's
throwing
another
rocks
one
at
with
it.
some kids, I think it's in Mexico or somewhere, encountered what looked like a garden gnome that was walking in the street. You
Yep.
can't find that anymore either. There's
Nope.
one similar, but the one I remember that showed the best angle and stuff
You
of it,
can't
it's
find it.
gone. It's
And you
absolutely
wonder
gone.
why they bothered to scrub that, because you can't find it on any search engine. I don't care if you use DuckDuckGo or Brave or whatever, Google, anything, you can't find it. So you wonder. And now I think we're going to see a lot more as more and more people are having cameras. I remember when I put cameras up in my house, I said I don't want to see them. When you got movement in the thing, I'm just going to assume it's a cat and just, and that it's why bother to have them. But if I see something walking down the hall, now I'm going to have to see what now we got to investigate, figure out, take
Yeah.
care of it. But that's
Well,
just
I've
the way
had people, talk about putting the recorders and stuff on when they sleep. I don't want to know what's in here when
No,
I'm
me
asleep,
either. Me
because
either.
then it's something else to worry about. If it
You
wakes me
wor-
up, then I'll deal with it.
some of the scariest things that I've walked into stuff, knowing and you're prepared. But
Yeah.
when you're asleep and I heard somebody say my name right next
Mhm.
to my head, I felt the breath while I was asleep. And I was asleep enough to still just keep my eyes shut and just do my thing so
It's
it'd go
like,
away. And I
yeah,
felt it leave, but I didn't want to see it. I just didn't want to see it
yeah.
because I knew it
Well,
wasn't
if
good.
you start entertaining everything that comes along, you'll never get any sleep. And I don't
There
get
you
much
go.
anyway, about 2 hours a night. Make an appointment if you come and talk to me.
Exactly.
I
That's
got 22 other hours a day that you can come visit me.
absolutely true, honey. Absolutely true. Well, I don't know if we've hit all the monsters tonight, but I think we've
We hit
sure
a
hit on some
bunch.
good
We
favorite
might.
ones.
I know the other one was a part two. Maybe we need to do a part two on this
Probably a
one.
part two.
This has been a great talk. Just we've hit a lot of high points here and
I
had a
cannot
lot
let
of
you
good
go
chat.
without telling me about one of my favorites, Spring Hill Jack.
Oh, that was some sort of creature that was in England. I can't remember the exact years. I'd have, if I'd known you were going to ask
That's
me, I would have
sorry.
studied up on
Well,
it again.
yeah,
But
just
and he was just at it. It seemed like he had springs in his heels. He could jump over coaches or carriages. He could jump over high walls. He was usually seen around, I think it was at Highgate Cemetery, I think. This was going on kind of around the same time the Ripper stuff was going on, or not too far apart. And they would chase him. They'd think they'd caught him, and then he would jump up onto the roof and take off, and they could see him jumping from roof to roof to roof. He was also somewhat of a prankster. He had some kind of a brilliant light that he would flash in people's eyes to disorient them that
hmm
seemed to come from his chest. He wore what was described as a tight oilskin, almost like a superhero costume, with a metal helmet. And I remember one. I mean, a lady heard a knock at the door, and she's like, "Yes," and the voice says, "Bring a light. We've caught Spring Hill Jack in the lane." So she goes and gets a candle, brings it back to the door, and it's Spring Hill Jack waiting outside the door, and he flashed his light at her,
that was it.
and that was it. But they
Wow.
never caught him. They would see footprints and stuff where he'd been, and there are people that speculated that he had to be something paranormal or from another world because
hmm
no matter how hard you train, I don't think a human could ever jump like that. People say, like, well, if you put weights on your legs and jumped all the time, then eventually you'd build up muscles. But still, there's a limitation in the physiology. Otherwise, you'd have
Absolutely.
people doing stuff like that in the Olympics, that could
Right.
jump over cars and stuff. But
And of course the time too. I mean,
yeah,
it's where it was. I think I get intrigued by that one because of, it's kind of like the time of Jack the Ripper, and it's around that whole, it's got that whole foggy kind of feel to it, around Dickens' time and things like that. And I just love things like that.
yeah,
But there's another one, Jack the Ripper, a monster,
yeah,
and I'll tell you, I listened to H. Holmes the other night, and the extent to which this guy set up everything, like the serial killer, was so proud of it. And they actually had a guy reading his letters and stuff, like it, the way he would speak. It was like the creepiest thing I ever heard. And like I said at the beginning, sometimes monsters are really the worst monsters are human beings, or what we turn each other, let each other turn into, or whatever, or mental health or whatever, or medicines, pharmaceuticals, god knows what, but those are some of the saddest ones. But these cryptids and stuff, I still think, Steve and I have seen a couple. I mean, I can't even name off all the ones I've seen, and I wish I hadn't seen some, but some I just don't have an explanation for them at all. But I think every one that I've seen, Steve, I've gotten some kind of sad feeling off of, or
yeah,
lost feeling. And I'm wondering what you said one time, what if they're just falling out of a portal and don't know where they are, and now they're
yeah.
wandering
Just
around
imagine like
lost?
that baby Bigfoot sitting on the side of the road about to trip over his lower lip. What if he
Mm-hmm.
was standing there next to his mom one minute, and then the next he's on a country road in Alabama.
Uh-huh.
He just sat down. What do I do now?
It's true. But it's, we get scared because we're always scared of the unknown, or we're intrigued by it, depending on how it hits us at the time. But I
Yeah,
think those earlier movies about the monsters, and, you know, the original ones, the Frankensteins, the Draculas, the Invisible Man. I even forgot about Jekyll and Hyde and things like that. They intrigued us as kids, and I think it sparked a lot of interest from to where we are now, and then we start seeing things. But I think it created a lot of open minds, and a lot of good discussions like we have, and we're having in the chat tonight. Hey, Sue, she came back. Anybody that didn't catch the whole thing, please go back and listen and watch the video, because I think if anything else, it's going to spark a little bit of that nostalgia in your heart if you ever did see those movies. And if you didn't see them, maybe that's what you should do. Set up a night with your family. I mean, a lot of them, I wouldn't say they're kid friendly, because I don't know what age group your kids are, but it's definitely ones you could sit around and watch with children of a certain age, if they don't get scared too much, because there's not a lot of blood, there's not a lot of gore. It's all the build up and the story and the behind, the behind story and all of that stuff, and what happens to the people, and they're really good. They're really, really good, and I'd highly recommend watching some of those old ones from Universal. Now, the Hammer ones, I'm not as familiar with those. What were those? The ones that came after? Or?
They were after that. They were like, I think, late 50s, early 60s.
Okay.
Came out of British Hammer Studios.
Okay. Got
that
it.
was where you had, they were heavy on Vincent Price and Peter Cushing and the other guy, Christopher Lee.
Yes.
And all those guys. They made some just classic, Rite of Dracula, all that stuff. Satanic Rites of Dracula. They were heavy on the occult horror, more so than the Universal Monsters were.
Yep, Jackie says that her favorite series was the Frankenstein series, and Andrew Gnomes Trucking here says that something I totally forgot. Trap doors that led into the basement with acid baths. That was almost as bad as quicksand.
Yeah, just talking about H.H. Holmes there. Yeah. And there was an American equivalent of Spring Hill Jack, and I can't. It's like, I made a video about it. It's say the Baltimore Flash or something like that. But there was a similar person in America, and then there was one in Prague that they called the Spring Man, who was around the same time. It's just like all of a sudden, these things started showing up in several different countries that could jump high enough to get up on a roof or jump over a horse and buggy, stuff like that. So that's odd the way it all comes about at once. There's some kind of cosmic prankster or something going on. We've talked about that, how back in the 50s, it was the Men in Black, or 50s and early 60s. And, well, they're nice dressed. They were driving nice cars. Surely people will talk to them. But then, they looked funny. They talked funny. People didn't want anything to do with them.
Right.
Then you had like the phantom clowns. Well, we'll send clowns out. In the 70s and 80s, you had these clowns showing up in different cities. And it happened almost all at once. Lauren Coleman wrote a real interesting movie on how I think the first place was in Boston. And then suddenly all over the country, these clowns in black vans were showing up. Like, oh, well, clowns. Everybody loves clowns. We'll send clowns out. But these were creepy clowns that came out of the woods or tried to entice children into black vans. And then you have the black-eyed kids. Oh, well, everybody loves kids. We'll send kids around. People will let kids in, but these are creepy kids with black eyes, and that. So whatever's out there, it can't quite get it right. Whatever it's trying to infiltrate or send out. And I've often said that if I ever disappear, go look for the black-eyed bikini models with pizza and metal albums, and
because you're opening the door.
I'll let them in. Come on in,
ladies. He's inviting them in. No
pizza and metal albums. Step this way. Black eyes. We'll get you some sunglasses. It don't matter.
Absolutely, but the hypnotic and the telepathy. And that's one that gets me too. And I'm wondering if they're, like I always said, I think all these things are connected one way or another, whether it's just energy or whatever. But it's that gets me, because I've had ghosts do that. I've had I've definitely had that with animals. Everybody that has a pet, and that what they're thinking, and that, kind of, have you ever tried that with a pet where you just look at them and you kind of think, come here, come here, come here?
Oh, Mulder and I can do that. I can sit across the room and concentrate just the right way, and Mulder will turn and look at me and then come over to me.
There you go.
It's like he knows. He's got some sort of sixth sense or something. Now, sometimes he chooses to ignore it.
Right.
He'll look at me and just be like, yeah, whatever. Unless you got a treat, I ain't bothering. But
I've done
something
that with
else.
stray animals all the time,
Yeah,
especially
and
if they're hurt. I
well, it's
send
like
it
when
out,
you're
you
in
know?
in public and you can feel somebody staring at you.
Yes.
I've done that. I've tried to, like, I'll stare at a person and see if I can make them turn and look at me, and usually you
And you
can.
can.
But you can concentrate too hard and it won't work. There's just this certain
There's just this
kind of
sweet spot.
wavelength that you've
Sweet
got to
spot.
hit, and when you hit that sweet spot, you can make anybody turn around and look at you.
That's so true, man. It's so true. But you think about aliens, a lot of that. So, what are they doing? What have we shut down? Because we should be able to do it just as
Well,
just as
I
good.
think it's all the preservatives in our food, the fluoride in our water, all the different medicines and things that are foisted on us. I think they wanted to shut down certain abilities and talents that we as humans have that we've forgotten how to use and maybe can't even use anymore. Like a lot of that from the pineal gland.
Right.
Supposedly
The fluoride in the
the
water. Yeah.
fluoride coats that and it shuts it off. That's the third eye. So
Yeah, I had somebody not too long ago, just within the last 2 weeks, tell me, well, I'm working on opening my pineal gland. I want to do it really quick, and I'm like, you might not want to do that really quick. Because the stuff that you see is a gradual thing, and if you do it gradual, you're also getting the rest of you ready for it too, and raising your consciousness.
what is they call it, a trephining, what the
Yeah.
Egyptians used to do, where they'd actually drill a hole in
Yep.
their forehead to open the third eye.
Wow. Yeah, I don't recommend
Yeah,
that.
we don't
No,
recommend that unless you know
that
what you're
method
doing.
is not on the top 10. That's
But
for sure.
talking about the black-eyed kids, now I'm starting to hear reports of black-eyed adults. And you think about that, the first black-eyed kid reports that I heard in my experience was back in the 90s. So did those kids grow up? Or
I
they,
don't know. That's
because
interesting.
they'd be in their 30s now, so or 40s. So whether black-eyed kids become black-eyed adults, or is it something else?
Yeah. And you think too, a lot of times, the thing that gets me about them too, not just the telepathy and the hypnotic trance that they can seem to put some
Yeah.
people in. Anybody that has gotten away from them, and there's not many that's
Yeah.
gotten away to tell, they got close or they didn't let them in or they disappeared. You hear that pop when they, when they leave. But it's the sickness. It's getting sick, and you get something real evil. I mean, I had that thing that
And you
happened.
let it in.
Yep.
You invited it in, and that's the whole thing. I mean, that's vampires. It's in the Bible. It's on so many different places that anything really only has the power over you that you give it, because you were created a free sovereign spirit, free sovereign being, and you don't have to accept all that stuff. But a lot of people do it unknowingly or unwittingly. Or in the case, you let the vampire in, you open the door for the black-eyed kids, then there you go. But it's strange that because of some of the similarities in those, like the vampires, they have to be invited in. The black-eyed kids be invited in.
Invited in.
You have to, a lot of this dark and evil stuff, you have to
Did you invite it in?
invite it in, open a door for it, whether metaphorically or physically. But you think about that as far as the shutting down of our psychic abilities and wild talents and things that, as Charles Fort called them, who would profit or who would benefit most from us not having those?
Right.
Who doesn't want you to think for yourself? Who wants you to
Exactly.
just do whatever you're told and accept whatever you read or hear as truth and don't make waves? I mean, it's a government, may not be our government, but some sort of government, a shadow government, something that's in place that doesn't want a free-thinking populace. I mean, if we could read our politicians' minds, they'd all be hanging from the lampposts. I'm telling
That's
you.
absolutely true. It's absolutely true. And and also I think people are real used to living in the. It's almost like, let me do it paranormal. Some ghosts almost get caught in their own box, almost like a cage they built for themselves. They think other people have, but they put themselves in. I think a lot of people got in that. I got to go to work. I got to pay my bills. I got to get gas. I got to get a coffee so I can get to work and pay my bill. And you just run, and before you know it, years have gone by and you didn't stop. If you stop and you do things like in nature and being kind to nature, whether it's out there growing a garden or planting flowers or feeding birds or going for a walk in the farm, that's when it starts coming back. and a lot of people ground that way. They'll take their shoes off and walk in the grass.
That's what I do.
Dance, yeah, me too. And dance in the grass. Just get your hands in the dirt, hug a tree, hold a tree, touch a tree. Just listen. Just be real quiet and listen. I think that's why so many people enjoy going out in nature or a park or something like that. Try to get that back. And I think our souls remember. You know what I mean? And want to get that back because it knows it's good for
We used to have such connection to the land, to other life on the planet, animals and creatures and things like that. We've lost all that.
Yeah.
Now it's all about instant gratification and convenience. And the world's gotten smaller, but are we really any better off? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I think they're worse off because, there used to be so much time spent. I miss the walks with, my grandmother in the woods and her showing me the sassafras tree or the mullein leaf or the, whatever, and telling me what they did with it. And the days seem longer.
Yeah.
And,
I've got an app on my camera that'll do all that. But what I wouldn't give to go back and walk through the woods with my dad and have him tell me what every plant is and what it's good for or what it's not good for, what will happen if you take it. That sort of thing. Nightshade and poison oak and different ivy and different roots and different nuts and flowers.
Here's a little thing before I forget. I just read the other day that hemlock is popping up all over the place in places it shouldn't be. And it looks just like, I'll tell you what, you want to talk about some poison. Hemlock, it looks just like Queen Anne's lace, except the stems are like a burgundy red. And they get darker as they get toward the flower. And it's popping up all over. Do you remember a couple years ago where there was some kind of weed popping up that dogs or humans got in, that blisters and pop everywhere?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it disappeared. And now it's hemlock. So now there's hemlock, poison hemlock popping up everywhere.
Signs of the end times, the plague's being visited upon us.
I think so. Here comes the gnashing of teeth and everything else. Maybe all the cryptids are coming in here to tell us
the hideous apparitions.
To get out.
And in all seriousness, it feels like the veil is getting thinner. I mean, normally there's certain times a year when it feels like this.
Yes.
But it's starting to feel like it all the time now. I'm really interested to see what it's going to feel like around Samhain, around Halloween, around the Day of the Dead,
Get ready.
All Saints Evening and All Saints Day and all that. Normally, when it's thin, it's going to be super thin. This time, I think we'll see an increase in
the activity
cryptids.
Is incredible.
And it talks about that in the Bible, the hideous apparitions that people will see. That your young men will dream dreams and your old men will have visions, or the other way around. I may have got that screwed up, but I think we're going into that now. There's some sort of a rebirth, some sort of a spiritual awakening. There's more and more interest in this type of stuff. We're kind of in a renaissance, a new golden age of the paranormal, the most people ever. And again, this is one instance where having all this communications does work. We can get the word out there. I can put a story on missing persons and mysteries, and by this time tomorrow, 15,000, 20,000 people have already heard it.
Isn't that wonderful?
Last month, for example, in 28 days, our videos got 1.25 million views. That's, 1.25 million people that listen to me tell something. That blows my mind. That's scary. I'm looking out the window.
Yeah, it's funny. But see, that is good. I was thinking about that too because, just being, everybody in the chat talking together and talking about what we're talking about and giving out ideas and stuff like that. We didn't have that, 20, 30 years ago. I mean, it was just, we were scratching around for people to tell us
back
stories.
Then, pre-internet, it was bulletin board systems. Your computer would call somebody else's computer, and you could only handle one call at a time. Some of the bigger BBS systems might have had multiple callers, but you'd read stuff on there. I found a lot of esoteric and occult text and things. Download the text files, on the old 2400 baud modem. If it had a picture or anything to go with it, it'd take you 10 minutes to download a picture.
That's true.
And now, boom, instant.
Yep, I think it was sightings, and I remember I think it's the second year of sightings when the computer was around and they had the people sitting at the desk with the computers, if you've seen anything, or you have any information on this story or whatever, come and tell us. And then you had America's Most Wanted doing it, stuff like that, and that was something. I remember being on those old purple screens with the thing trying to find out stuff, and it's really amazing that we can do this. But you know what? It's also good because we can give each other strength, and we can give each other, hope, and we can give each other ideas like, okay, well, maybe, what you saw is this or what you saw is that. But I'm telling
Yeah.
you, get ready to start seeing some really strange things out
It's
there.
going to increase.
It is.
And that's our whole channel, is to try and help these missing people, their families, find closure and things. That's the main purpose, is to boost that signal. And we're doing a good job getting it out there. I mean, 100,000 subs, that's great.
That is
102,000 now.
fantastic.
But we also, the mystery side of that, we play into that heavily too. The listener stories. I don't know how many people I've had, thank you for you and Bill for giving us this platform.
Just
I
to
can come
tell
on
the
here and
story.
tell my story. And then
Absolutely.
other people, I've had people say, that happened to me, and I've never discussed it. I've never told anybody until I heard
We
this
get it
guy
too.
give his account. Now I got to tell you mine. It's great. It's, like a hive mind, a collective, cooperative thing going on there, where the more stories told, the more stories will be told, because people remembered or aren't afraid to tell it. There's a lot of fear out there. I mean, I've had people send me stuff that they wanted me to narrate anonymously and say, I never even told my wife or my husband
I
about
know.
this. My family doesn't know this. I was afraid, they'd lock me up or think I was an addict or an alcoholic or something. And just
Yeah.
that's sad to me, because I've seen stuff that I wouldn't tell just anybody about, because they do. You get kind of that, sidelong glance, like,
Yeah.
what you
I
smoking,
get
bud?
that a lot, Steve.
But I get that a lot less now. I like it that it's coming
I
to
know. It's true.
public
Yeah.
acceptance, basically, that there are things that we don't understand, and people have experiences. There are experiencers. John Keel coined that term, and that's a good thing, an experiencer. And
Experiencer.
I say that that's all a skeptic is somebody that hasn't had a strong enough experience yet.
Absolutely. And I think, too, that people are starting to realize, like we told stories of, words have power, and, writing and spelling, and, all this different thing. You are responsible for the things you say and you do and everything else. And like we said, you can get somebody attached to you, don't speak ill of the dead, that kind of thing. And another reason why I came up is exactly what you just said, Steve. Is because the veil's thinning, and people are going to start seeing more and more strange things. And I think as we raise our consciousness and start becoming more aware, and you start getting more of that, 40,000 foot view of things that are going on, I think there's gonna be a little rise in that, and then it's gonna
Yeah.
come back to a kinder, everybody's consciousness is going to be a little bit more raised, and that's
Yeah.
what I hope for
Because,
anyway.
and I think it needs that, because it's just gotten so ugly. I
Yes.
mean, most places you go on the internet, it's toxic.
Yes,
There are
so
people,
toxic.
and it's that anonymity that the internet gives you, that people are just emboldened to say anything.
But
I
keep
mean,
in mind, you've printed it, you thought it, you said it, you printed it, you put it out in the universe, and the universe hears you.
yeah. So
You're not, you
that,
can't hide from everybody.
yeah, that law of
So true.
sowing and reaping. That's when you put something out there, when you tell a story, when you write a comment, you're planting the seed. So just make sure your harvest is something that you want, that's coming back for you. So we talked about that. You take a kernel of corn, you plant that. You don't get a kernel of corn back. You get a stalk, and on that stalk there's several ears, and on each one of those ears there's maybe 100 kernels of corn. So make sure you've got a harvest that you want when whatever you plant, whatever you sow.
Absolutely, and be careful walking through the corn, because there's stuff in there and there's stuff in the woods. But I think I'd rather walk through the woods and the cornfield than a mall any day. But that's just me.
I'm telling you,
That's just me.
give me the
And I
woods.
love every single person in the chat, and I'm trying to catch as much as what you're saying. And everybody in here has had experiences or understanding, either through these old movies or movies that have come through, and being able to discern the fake from the real. And a lot of times movies will take a good story and just ruin it,
Yeah.
by changing everything around for
Amen.
effect. And that's so true, because the heart of the real experience, like an entity and all these other ones, that's the true thing. And I like that this show gets back to that, and gets back to the true experience. And what did you see? And did mom really come back and tell me that she's okay and she loves me? Did I see my dog in my dream? Did that feather really show up inside a locked car? All of these things. And I'm seeing more and more of it. I'm seeing it come faster. I'm seeing things like, I don't even ever say, give me a sign if I'm doing this right. It just happens Like the butterfly will come, out of nowhere, or,
No.
just at odd times of the year. Just any of those. And I want everybody in the chat to start doing that a little bit if you're not doing that already, and just open yourself up first to the miracle of it all. Don't so much, concentrate on like all the negative, because that's exciting and it's good to learn about demons and this and that. But I'm telling you, like the jinn and things like that, and I made sure I put those in there. Some of these things you really don't want to know, and I wouldn't even say it out loud like I want to know more about this because I'm interested in it, and I know people like that who do that. Like Zariah is the only living person
He'll
I
do
know.
anything. He'll
That's
sit there and
he says,
pronounce a whole book
yeah,
full of demon
yeah,
names.
uh-huh.
I was on there with Steph Young, and she's like, "You couldn't pay me to pronounce those names out loud."
Nope,
I'm like, "Me either."
me either.
And Sarai's
But
like, "Oh, I
he's
love
got
it."
this. But he also has a knowledge of and a protection on him and a way to fight back. You just don't do it, and not know how to handle
Yeah,
what
yeah,
you're
he
doing.
does know. He has some arcane knowledge. That guy. I
Yeah,
mean,
he does.
he's studied the stuff. He knows his
Hmm.
beans
Hmm.
when it comes to the occult and the
Absolutely.
anything in the bizarre, the magical decay.
Yeah.
And that's why he's emboldened and brave enough to do that. He knows that if something comes around, he knows how to banish it.
Yep. He's good.
So,
Yeah.
but
And
the
I've seen
average
people
person
like
do
that.
that, you're courting disaster.
Yep. And people like Bill Bean, who was not able to be on the show last Wednesday. I spoke to him, and he's extremely busy. But this is this is the busiest he's been. He is an exorcist, a demonologist, a spiritual warrior, and this man will drive 100 miles, 2, 3, 400, to go to a family and help them rid them of their evil burdens that they've got going on, and get tore up, because
And
he
he's
went
good
through
at
it as a kid. He's so
family
good.
curses,
He's
generational
so good.
curses, bloodlines, things like that. That
Yep. I
you can
call
have
him
a
brother.
curse on you that you don't even know about because it's
Right.
so many generations back.
Right, absolutely, but he's so busy, and he calls me an earth angel. I said, I don't know about that, Bill, but I'm trying. I
He's
have
going to
to
get
earn that
busier
name.
too with all
He
this
is.
stuff going on. He's going to get
He's getting
extremely
extra help.
busy.
He's getting extra help, and
And
there's so
then
many.
even for us going into this time of year, this is our busy time of year, September
Hmm.
and October.
That's us.
Last year, I probably did, I don't know, 50, 60 shows in
Yep.
October. I could easily do a show every day, and some days I did two or three. I'd
Yes, you
record a
did.
podcast here, record a podcast there, then go live on my show. I've done three
Hmm.
shows that day,
So
So,
much.
but I
It's
love it.
it's and it's good that people are inquisitive, and this chat is just spectacular. You're gonna have to go back. Anybody that where the show drops, and I know I've said this before, but I didn't know it. Maybe the younger people know, because I'm not a techie. But it takes about a day for the live chat to go back. To come back in and click back in. So
Yeah.
go back like tomorrow sometime and go back over the live chat and listen to the knowledge in this chat. Listen to some of the experiences these people are having. Because of course they're throwing out movies in the beginning and stuff, but
Yeah.
really getting in there and having
I
conversations.
can't
There's
wait
so many.
to go back and read the chat. There's so many
Oh,
good
so many good.
conversations going on here that I couldn't
Absolutely.
participate in.
Yep. Yep. And see, they have to. It's a lot of people going to help people, and that's cool, because this is it. If you're a light worker, you're about to get real busy.
Shadow workers too. There are
Shadow
people that
work.
work in the shadows to
Absolutely.
work in the light as well.
Hmm.
So whatever
Absolutely.
your path,
Yep.
it's going to get busy.
Yep, and it'll come back to you. It'll come back to you, and because that's what we need right now is a lot of people who will take a loving, kind approach to this, and it helps both sides really. And I got to tell you, I can't help but be sad for these cryptids that are coming in and not knowing what they're doing. And again, I still think that Bigfoot goes in and out of portals. That's why you're not finding bodies. I was told that as a young girl by Native American people that I trust very much, and half here and half in the spirit world. And I think that's a little different than some that are just coming from other dimensions and falling in. I think they have a knowledge, and I don't think all of them are the same. That's just me. That's my theory right now. Not all of them are the same. I think some stay, and kind of like I wrote in the book, some stay and then some come to help when they get in trouble, because they wouldn't have been able to last here as long as they have, and being undiscovered, because we're eating up land like crazy. And there was the Rougarou in there, and the Wolfman and Dogman and all that. They're all different. And the one that I wanted to mention before we get off of here is a lot of people are seeing these humanoids. Humanoid, the size of a human, with wings, very much like the Mothman looked.
Yeah.
But they are highly intuitive and connected in. The thing that people are seeing, and I've actually known a couple people that have actually gone to the psychiatrist over this because they just can't believe what they saw, and it's, and trying to get it. And I'll tell you, throwing a lot of pharmaceuticals on it's not going to make them go away. But
it might make you forget about them or not able to interact with them, but I think that's the worst thing you can do.
I'm not a doctor, but I'm just saying. But what they're seeing, and they're large and black, they seem to be very much like Spring Hill Jack, where they can jump, and they're seeing things like, if anybody in the chat knows the movie The Prophecy, where, like, when Christopher Walken came back as an angel and he would just hover on the edge, like sitting like a bird on the edge of a building, or the way they sat and the wings kind of came around. That's what a lot of people are seeing right now. Of course, years ago, they started in Chicago and spread out. But they're popping up all over, and now
I've heard of
some
people
of them
seeing stuff perched on a building like that, a humanoid creature, winged humanoid, sitting on the parapet of a building, like a gargoyle or something, but then it flies away. Stick men. I've heard of people seeing these creatures that look like a kid's stick drawing, but it's up walking and running around, even though it's still two-dimensional.
Unbelievable.
I read a story the other day where one ran across the street in front of their car and said it looked just, it had the round head and the stick limbs.
You almost wonder if somebody's not messing with our minds with stuff like that.
And then I heard of something not too long ago, and I think this was just across the river in Vancouver, Washington. A lady saw a praying mantis that was as tall as the light pole out by the street. Now you think about that. What if we start getting hit by giant insects? You can't get a big enough can of Raid to kill a praying mantis that big.
I'm telling you, and that's, but the thing is I'm hearing these stories from people that don't normally talk to each other in places that they're not, you know what I mean? And I kept one of the things, like, quiet for a long time. Apparently when they look at you, they have no face. Just no face.
Oh, that's creepy.
Now, I'm wondering if they actually have a face, but they're blocking it from your, your perception.
Well, it's like the screen memories. So a lot of UFO abductees talk about seeing owls or remembering owls, but then under hypnotic regression, it wasn't owls at all, but some sort of gray or other type of alien.
Right. There's a lot of that going on, and we have Sir Brian Bowden in here. I'm wearing your T-shirt, honey. You can see right through
there
it.
he is.
See?
Yeah, he planned that.
It's
I'm
like
telling you.
I shot holes through me or something. But he said the reason for so many cryptids as of late, and for the Mandela effect, is to the use of the colliders. Oh, yeah.
CERN and
absolutely.
Hadron Collider, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. They're messing with some dark energy there that they don't need to mess with.
It is, and everything is turned up to 11.
What they're going to lose from out of there.
Everything is turned up to 11 right now. I mean, I had Bill on 2 years ago on a show, and we were talking about CERN and all the stuff. And I'm telling you, stuff's cranking up, guys. So,
get ready. Buckle up.
Buckle up.
Put on your big boy and big girl panties, because it's going to be a wild ride.
It is going to be a wild ride, and a lot of things are also drawn to anxiety and fear and all this other stuff, like old Green Eyes, just drawn to the to the anxiety and the death and the pain and all that kind of stuff of a battlefield. So that's the kind of thing. But you know what, anytime the universe sends something like that, they're going to send good to battle it as well. So that might be you. So absolutely keep your peripheral vision going. Everything's going to be good, because the light
Watch your
always
six.
wins. But the light always wins, and just know that you carry that inside of you. So, and that's strong. And don't let anybody tell you different. I love you all, and I'll tell you, tonight has been one heck of a convo, Steve. How much fun!
I'm ready to do a part 2.
I know, we probably
And I
could.
wanted to invite everybody here tomorrow night. Meet me over on Cassie's channel, Oracles and Beyond. We'll be doing live Oracle card readings. I've been reading from the Dark Mirror Oracle.
Great.
I've got some new decks here. The Oracle of Shadows and Light, Mystical Shaman Oracle deck, Magical Messages from the Fae. I don't know about that one. I'm not sure if I would trust anything from the Fae or not.
Right.
I've got several more. Magic of You Oracle I read from this for the
Oh,
first
that
time
one's
the other
pretty.
night and got some really good results with it. The artwork is beautiful.
Wow, that
And
is
I've
really
got
pretty.
several more here that I'm using. This one's popular. This is one of my favorite persons that do these decks, Colette Baron Reed. It's the Spirit Animal Oracle. These are great if you want to know
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, that's a
from
lot
hear
like
from
the
your
ones I
spirit
have. I
animal.
have the shaman cards. I have these
Yeah,
here. And I'm working with them. The thing is these aren't really the ones where you can ask and answer for a question. They're more like, like pick three, your spirit. One's going to have your soul memory to them, so like the characteristics and stuff like that, and then your
yeah,
spirit animal and your medicine
yeah.
and things
That's
like that. So they don't really read the
the good
same.
in depth here. Now we're doing like
Yeah,
the quick one card
right.
readings. You can make arrangements. Several of the people that read with us
Mm-hmm.
do the more in depth multi card layout readings and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
this is just kind of a quick thing. Either meditate on a specific question or just clear your mind and see what the universe throws at you,
Right,
and
because a
have good
lot of
luck with it.
times when you're asked things like you go and seeing anybody a really good medium or something like that,
Yeah,
I just sit there and go just they know what I need to hear. Just tell them,
yeah,
tell them to tell me whatever it is, because you might think you're there for one reason, but you're there for another, and that's the same with a lot of ghosts and a lot of other things,
yeah.
because they're there for a whole different reason than you're thinking. And when you really dig down and you really get to the nitty gritty of it, you find out you learned just as much from that ghost as it's maybe there to help you or learn from you too. I mean, it's amazing. It's an
Excuse
amazing
me.
world we live in with some of it's pretty scary stuff, very intriguing, like Glimmer Man. Like I said, I don't know much about it, or Slender Man, or things like that. I still say
Yeah.
everybody says that was created as a creepy pasta, but I have a different theory.
Well,
I think it really exists, and it was putting it into the mind of the writer, because I've
it
had
could
that
do
happen.
that, or like the Native American stuff, the tulpas and things like that. You
Tulpas,
can spend enough time thinking about something.
yes.
Again, back to Walter Gibson, the
Mhm.
guy that wrote the Shadow novels and radio plays.
Mhm.
This is a man who was such a prolific writer. He would have six typewriters and go from one to the other to the other. He literally wrote every waking moment, and he started seeing Lamont Cranston, who was the name of the Shadow, the character from the stories, appearing in his home. And he even had guests at a dinner party that said, who's this guy dressed like the Shadow? And
Mhm.
Lamont's or Walter's like, that is the Shadow. He said, that's what do you call it, a mental impression or a thought impression or something, a thought manifestation. And
Mhm.
he said, literally, I've sat here, most of my life now, the last several years of it, and put blood, sweat, and tears into these stories,
Mhm.
and he came forth. And I think it's the thing like that with the Slender Man. Anything, if you put enough
Mhm.
energy and enough people concentrating on it and thinking about it, you can cause it to manifest whether you mean to or not.
Right.
But when you've got little middle school girls, two of them planning
Yep.
to murder another middle school girl so they can go visit Slender Man in his castle, they were going to do it as a sacrifice, and they were serious. Where did that come from? That's not something kids just make up. Something
No,
dark,
something's.
something evil
Mhm.
is using that energy and putting thoughts
Mhm.
like that in your head. You can make things manifest.
Absolutely.
What was that book? Messages from Michael, I think was the name of it,
Yep.
where the first university in the country, I can't remember if it was Duke, I think it was Duke,
Mhm.
somewhere in North Carolina, they had the first parapsychology department. And
Mhm.
that was a ghost that they created just by
Yep.
sitting and thinking about it. They would have these
The
meetings.
You
They
talking
would
about
give
the
him,
Philip experiment?
maybe it's Philip, yeah,
Philip
that
experiment.
Philip, Michael, or the
Yeah.
other. But
I
they
understand.
they would imagine his different characteristics. They would talk about his backstory, who he had been when he was alive, and it was totally just fabricated. But
Mhm.
then they started seeing interaction with it, poltergeist-like activity, movement of things that they attributed to him. So it was like they created a ghost, a thought form, and brought it to life.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? Brian's got a great idea here. Let's manifest 1,000 subs for Cisco.
There you go.
Thanks, Brian, for thinking of me. I appreciate you, hon. I appreciate the T-shirt. I had no idea it had this ability. I'm telling you, you blow me away every time. It happened to be green, and it's just cut through, but it looks like you'd see right through me. And I'll tell you, it reminds me of that poor guy in the Civil War out by the church, not far from here at Fort Mom, by Molly Pitcher's Well, out here in where the church was, where they used it for a hospital during the Battle of Monmouth, and the guy was sitting on the tombstone because it was a little church, and a cannonball came through, and they said he sat there for a second or two and was still talking, and the guys that were with him could see right through him before he fell over and died.
Holy cow.
And that's the first thing I thought of when I thought this, because you see right through me, you see my candles and everything behind me.
I think
so
that's
funny.
typical of Brian Bowden, though, to send a woman a see-through shirt.
There you go. Thanks, Bri.
I love you, Brian.
There are no
Sorry, I couldn't
coincidences.
resist.
There's no coincidence, he says. And I can't thank you all enough. We've kind of had an extended. Oh my gosh, Steve, look how long we've
Yeah, I
gone.
know. We've
Oh,
done
we
two
could
and a
keep
half
going.
hours.
Thank you all
We
who
could.
stayed with us. Thank you for all the wonderful things in the chat. Think about some of those old movies and the old monsters, and maybe if you think of think about the old monsters, you won't be the new ones that are coming, I think. And the new ones I think we're going to be seeing probably in a couple
Pseudonym
weeks.
makes a point there. H.P. Lovecraft was an expert at bringing the unknown into this realm just by writing about it. He was definitely pulling that from somewhere out there. Stephen King talked about a story he was going to write one time called Lovecraft's Pillow, that if you had the pillow that belonged to Lovecraft and you went to sleep on it, what kind of dreams would you have? It was part of a writing contest. He didn't actually write it. That was the prompt.
Wow.
But yeah, I think HP was tapped into something out there in the ether. I mean, he's the guy supposedly that authored the Necronomicon, but he just, I made it up. But if you've ever read that, that's not something you just sit down and make up.
No.
That's channeled. I don't care.
A lot of things are channeled. You know, with me, I used to call you up
Cisco channeled Cabin 22. She's like, Steve, I don't even remember writing this part, but I know I did because I'm the only one here.
Yep, absolutely. Those characters come to life, and everybody was really touched by them. I think everybody's favorite was Rage the dog and Tater. Everybody wanted poor Tater.
Poor Tater.
Poor Tater to come through, and I'm not going to tell you how it ends, but if you like Tater, you like them, and I loved all the characters in there. The little boy, all of the rat, old Buck, the rat, and the Moonshiners, Jeb
Dave,
and
what was the dog's name?
Rage.
Mm-hmm. They should have their own series, Dave and Rage.
There could very well be another book coming behind this, absolutely, because they're, what they do could bring them into some other stuff. So I'm thinking about it. We're definitely getting that in paperback first, and then we'll do the next one. But I guarantee I channeled some of it. Some of those characters wanted to talk.
Yeah.
They
wanted their story told, and that's why it poured out like it did. It was like pouring water out of a pitcher or something. It just flowed.
It flowed. Thanks. I'm proud of it. I really like it. And if you want to catch that, it is it's all on my channel. It starts with The Cabin is the prequel. It's a short little Halloween gift that I wrote Steve just to give him a break for that day for Halloween because that's his birthday, and I narrated it and people liked it, and I wrote the rest, and I didn't stop for 6 more parts. It's about 14 hours long. I narrate it. I do all the voices. Brian Bowden, God bless him, he was my go-to for some of the Dogman and Rougarou stuff.
He was the technical consultant for some of the cryptids and strange things in there.
And some of the stories, and with a lot of other people I could reach out to as well for some of that stuff. But I wouldn't doubt one day I walk around here and I see old Buck or Skeet coming around the corner.
or Tater.
I'd rather see Tater than Skeet, I'll tell you that, or old Buck too. But I hope you all enjoy that, and let me know if you read it. Appreciate it. And thank you for the likes and the subs and being here tonight with my good buddy Steve. We're going to get Brian Bowden on to come on and talk about Rougarou and Dogman and all of that.
I want to hear him tell the story of when he peed and caused a Dogman to get after him. That's the best. I've gotten so much mileage out of that, and it didn't even happen to me. But I've told that story from Brian over and over again.
It's true.
I got him to tell it last time we were all on together.
It's true.
I love that story.
It is. It's a great story. That's for sure.
But Cisco, thanks for having me on. Thanks to all my crew
darling.
that have been here. I love all of you. Thanks to all Cisco's people that are here anyway. I'll be tonight, Ghost Stories at midnight on 13 past midnight. And then, like I said, tomorrow evening at, I want to say 4 p.m. Eastern time. I'll be over on Cassie's channel, Oracles and Beyond, if somebody would drop a link for her channel in there.
All right.
Finn, I'll send you a link in Messenger. I would like for you to come. I want to read for you. Finn's going to be in one of my movies, her and Maddox, her friend. So anyway,
Yep,
and thanks for being
absolutely.
here. Love all the support, all the love in this channel. I mean, I love it when we can all get together, one mind here, and talk about high strangeness and weird things and all this. And there's no judgment, there's no name calling,
Nope.
there's no pointing and laughing. People just telling their own stories. Hey, Sue, I'll adopt you. Come on over.
There we go. There you
Always
go.
room for one more.
Absolutely. And you know what? That's how we are here. Come in the chat. There's always room for one more. Share it. Share it if you belong to a ghost group, a cryptid group, just a uncanny, whatever
No
mystery.
judgment here.
Share it off because we're absolutely, I have great guests. I know a lot of really wonderful people that are willing to share their knowledge and come on and talk to you guys. And we're just, like I said, we're just chasing the bullseye. And I don't know what ever happened if we'll hit it. I don't know if I want to know,
It's that
but it
old
sure is
paranormal
fun.
onion.
It sure is fun talking about it, and I love you so much, my brother, and thank you for spending so much time with us tonight.
Hit the like and the subscription on your way out the door, folks. Thank you, Cisco, for having me. I look
Thank
forward
you.
to next week. I'm hoping that we'll do Monsters 2 or something just as interesting. Be here, never a dull moment, whatever it is, whether we're uh, making icebergs fall on people or
Or what?
making cryptids
Yep.
show up. A lot of times when we talk this stuff, things will happen. I've had
Yep.
people say, I was listening to you and Cisco, and this happened in my house. So
And let us know.
expect, if you have anything paranormal while you're listening to this show or while listening to playback, let us know. It's happened to us several times. It's happened to us individually, but it seems to really take off when we get both our
When we get
energies
together,
together. Yeah.
absolutely. I had somebody tell me they came out of the shower. There was some writing on the mirror that wasn't there before, and I won't tell you what it said, but apparently it was right after they was listening to the show. So I mean, all these different things happen, and disclaimer. We didn't
Freaky.
cause it. We're just talking about it. But when energy gets together, when especially good energy gets together like this, it does open up your eyes to see some things.
Yeah,
Maybe
it raises everybody's
the
vibration.
vibration goes up. And I love you all so much. Y'all have raised my vibration tonight. We got a little outro. Steve's my book with Steve is there. It's on Amazon, ebook, paperback, whatever. It's got a
And
lot of good stuff in there.
my latest
There it
National Park
is.
Mysteries and Disappearances Volume 1. Actually, Volume
So proud of
2.
you, brother.
Volume 2 comes out tomorrow on Amazon. I don't think the paperback's ready yet, but it'll be available in ebook. Volume 2 is California, covering Joshua Tree, Yosemite, and Mount Shasta. And then Volume 3 is already on pre-sale. It's coming out December 17th, I think.
Wow.
15th, something like that. It's covering the Pacific Northwest out here where I'm at right now, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. So thanks for your support. Watch out for those. But definitely the book that Cisco and I did together, it's really her book. She did the heavy lifting. I just went along behind her and did the color commentary, the anecdotal stuff. But it's a great
Glad to
book.
have you, sweetie. I was glad to have you. I love all you guys in the chat. We're sorry we kept you so long tonight, but I hope you enjoyed it. And if you didn't get to see the video that I put together, I wanted to take you back nostalgia, a little nostalgia, and take you back to the good old days a little bit. So go back and check that out. We got a little outro here. We love you all. Stay strong and keep your feet under the covers and keep your closet doors shut because there are things that go bump in the night.
Good night, everybody. I'll see you a
night,
little
everybody.
further on down the road.
All
Thanks,
right.
Stockton Nights.
Good night, babe.
Bye, Cisco.